The bell rang, signaling the end of another dreary day at Ridgewood Elementary. Noah Thompson slung his worn backpack over his shoulder, his eyes glued to the ground as he hurried to his locker. He kept his head low, hoping to avoid any more confrontations. It had been a rough day, just like every other day. The taunts and jeers from the other kids had started the moment he walked through the school gates. "Hey, Noah, how's the nerd life treating you?" One of the popular kids, Jake, had called out, his voice dripping with mockery. Noah didn't respond. He had learned long ago that silence was the safest way to handle it. Words never worked anyway. His classmates knew he was different. His love for technology, his constant habit of fixing gadgets, and his introverted nature made him an easy target. He had never been part of the in crowd, and to be honest, he didn't mind. But what he did mind was how every day seemed to get worse. Each morning, he dreaded stepping into the school, knowing he would be ignored or, worse, picked on. His only refuge was the few hours spent in the library, where he could lose himself in books about space, rockets, and artificial intelligence. But today was different. As Noah walked toward his next class, the announcements blared over the school's intercom system. "Attention, students. We have a very special announcement today. Please stop what you're doing and listen closely." The voice was not the usual monotone voice of the principal, Mr. Winters. This was different, excited, almost urgent. Noah paused, glancing around. His classmates were still chatting and laughing, but there was a noticeable shift in the room. People started to quiet down, curiosity growing. "I'm pleased to announce that Ridgewood Elementary has been chosen for an extraordinary opportunity. You see, a very special guest is coming to visit us. He's one of the most innovative and influential figures in the world today. He's a genius inventor, entrepreneur, and the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla. That's right, Elon Musk is coming to Ridgewood." The words echoed in Noah's head. Elon Musk? The man who had founded Tesla, the genius behind SpaceX. The name alone was enough to make Noah's heart skip a beat. It wasn't the first time he had heard of Musk. Noah followed his work closely, but to have him come to his school, it seemed like something out of a dream. Before he could even process what was happening, the announcement continued. As part of his visit, Mr. Musk is going to meet with a select group of students and work on a special project. This is your chance to make a real impact, so stay tuned for more details in the coming days. The words hung in the air, and for a few seconds, Noah's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could it be? Could this really be happening? Was he dreaming? He was just a shy, bullied 10-year-old kid. What chance did he have to meet Elon Musk, let alone work on a project with him? But something inside Noah stirred. It was a flicker of hope, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Could this be the moment that changed everything? He quickly shook the thought away. No, he wasn't that lucky. There was no way a kid like him would ever be chosen. Not when there were so many other kids at school who were smarter, more outgoing, more popular. But as he continued to walk to class, the thought kept nagging at him. What if? Later that afternoon, as Noah sat in his last class of the day, his thoughts continued to race. It wasn't just the possibility of meeting Elon Musk that excited him. It was the idea that someone, anyone, would notice him, acknowledge his talents. All his life, he had been overlooked and made fun of. If he could work with someone like Elon Musk, it would be his chance to prove that he was more than just a bullied kid. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. Noah fumbled with it, quickly pulling up the text message from his mom. "Noah, I heard the news. This could be your big break. Stay strong. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough." He smiled, grateful for the support of his mom. She was his biggest cheerleader, always reminding him that he had something special. But even she couldn't shield him from the harsh realities of school life. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Noah slowly gathered his things. He glanced over at the group of kids who had tormented him all day. They were laughing, joking, oblivious to the chaos happening in his mind. They didn't know about the announcement, and Noah was fine with that for now. But then, as he turned to leave the classroom, something happened. Jake, the same kid who had mocked him earlier, called out to him. "Noah, hey, come here for a second." Noah froze. Why was Jake calling him? Was he going to make fun of him again? His heart raced, and he almost turned to run. But something told him to stay, to face whatever was coming. Noah walked cautiously toward Jake's desk, his palms sweating. "What do you want, Jake?" he asked, trying to sound braver than he felt. Jake grinned, but this time it wasn't the usual cruel grin. Instead, it was almost intrigued. "I heard about the Musk thing. You're probably going to be picked, right?" Noah blinked, confused. "What? You're smart, right? I mean, you're always fixing stuff with your gadgets. Maybe Musk will pick you to work with him," Jake said, sounding almost serious. Noah didn't know how to respond. Was this a joke? Was Jake actually trying to be nice? "Well, I guess we'll see," Noah said, trying to keep his composure. He turned and walked away before Jake could say anything else. His mind was spinning. Could it be possible? Could someone actually see past his awkwardness, past the bullying, and recognize the potential in him? Noah didn't know the answer, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something incredible. What would you do if you were in Noah's shoes? Would you embrace the opportunity, or would you feel too scared to take a chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next few days were a blur. Noah couldn't focus on anything else besides Elon Musk's visit. Every time he opened his phone or logged onto his computer, his mind would race with thoughts about the incredible opportunity that might await him. Would he actually get the chance to meet Elon Musk? Could he be the one chosen to work with him on a project? It all seemed too surreal. At school, the buzz about Elon Musk's visit only grew louder. Students from every grade talked about it, and Noah overheard snippets of conversations that ranged from excitement to skepticism. Some kids were already planning what they would say if they met Musk. Others joked that they would ask for free Tesla rides. But Noah, despite the excitement, felt more nervous than anything. He had spent years being the quiet, overlooked kid, the one who was always picked last in gym class and never invited to parties. The idea that he might be selected for something like this seemed like a far-off dream. It wasn't possible, was it? That afternoon, during lunch, Noah found himself sitting alone at the corner table, as usual. He absent-mindedly picked at his sandwich, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if I'm not good enough? What if they choose someone else? Suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Startled, he turned around to see Mr. Hargrove, the school's principal, standing behind him. Mr. Hargrove was a tall, stern man who always wore a suit, even on the hottest days. He had a reputation for being somewhat intimidating, and Noah had always kept his distance. "Noah Thompson?" Mr. Hargrove said in his deep, measured voice. "Could you come with me, please? Elon Musk's team would like to speak with you." Noah's heart skipped a beat. Was this real? Was he actually being summoned? He stood up, feeling a mix of panic and disbelief. Sure. What's this about?" Mr. Hargrove didn't smile. "You'll see. Come along now." Noah's legs felt like jelly as he followed Mr. Hargrove down the hall. His mind raced. Was this a joke? Was someone playing a prank on him? But as they walked past the principal's office and toward the staff lounge, Noah saw something that made his heart stop. There, standing just inside the lounge, was a small group of adults, some of whom Noah recognized from the news. He had seen their faces on TV, reporting on SpaceX's latest launches. And there, in the middle of the group, was a man who looked exactly like the Elon Musk he had seen in documentaries. His signature silver hair, sharp features, and confident posture. There was no mistaking it. Noah froze. He couldn't believe it. "Mr. Musk, this is Noah Thompson," Mr. Hargrove said, gesturing toward Noah. Elon Musk turned to him with a smile. It wasn't a forced smile or a polite one. It was genuine, like he was glad to see Noah. "Hey there, Noah," he said, his voice warm but calm. "It's great to meet you." Noah could barely speak. His brain was running in circles. This can't be happening. But there he was, standing face to face with one of the most influential people in the world. Hi, Mr. Musk." Noah finally managed to stammer, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect this." Elon smiled again. "Yeah, I know the feeling. But listen, we've been following your work here at Ridgewood. We've seen some of the things you've done with technology, the gadgets you've built, and the ideas you've shared with your teachers. You've got a lot of potential. Noah blinked. What do you mean? Well, Elon continued, we're here looking for a student who shows real promise in technology and innovation. And from what we've heard, you're just the kind of person we've been searching for. Noah felt like his entire world was spinning. This can't be real. Was he dreaming? He was just a kid who liked to build small robots and fix broken electronics. How could Elon Musk be interested in him? Elon leaned in slightly. We've got a project coming up, a collaboration between SpaceX and a few other companies. It's a big one, and we need someone with your kind of creativity and resourcefulness. Noah's mind was racing. You want me to work with you? Yes, Elon said, his eyes locking onto Noah's. We want you to be a part of this project. Your skills, your passion, it's exactly what we need. Noah's mouth went dry. But I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about what you do. Elon laughed softly. That's exactly why we want you. You're not stuck in the same old ways of thinking. We want fresh ideas, new perspectives. And besides, we'll help guide you through it. Noah could barely comprehend what was happening. This is insane. How could this be happening to me? Mr. Hargrove smiled and patted Noah on the back. It's a huge opportunity, Noah. Think about it. You're going to get the chance to work with some of the brightest minds in the world. For the first time in a long time, Noah felt a rush of excitement, overshadowing all the doubts that had plagued him. Could this really be the turning point he had been hoping for? Could he prove to everyone, not just his classmates but to himself, that he was capable of something great? I'll do it, Noah said, his voice steady now. I'll be part of the project. Elon grinned. Good. We knew you would be. As Mr. Hargrove led Noah back to class, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. His heart pounded in his chest, and his hands trembled. I'm going to work with Elon Musk. For once, Noah felt like he wasn't just the kid who was picked on. He wasn't just the kid who sat in the back of the class, unnoticed. He was someone who had the chance to change the world. The following week was a whirlwind. Noah barely had time to catch his breath before the whirlwind of emails, meetings, and preparations for the project began. The first day he met Elon Musk was still so surreal in his mind that he couldn't help but replay the moment over and over. Was this really happening to me? The project was ambitious, and Elon Musk's team was serious. They weren't just looking for a kid with a knack for building things. They were looking for someone who could think outside the box, someone who could contribute in ways that even the most advanced engineers couldn't. Noah had barely begun to grasp the scope of what he had gotten himself into. The first thing Elon's team did was set up a series of virtual meetings, where Noah would have one-on-one sessions with some of the brightest minds at SpaceX and Tesla. The idea was simple. Give Noah the foundational knowledge of how these companies worked, and teach him how to apply his skills to the bigger picture. Elon wasn't looking for someone who could just build gadgets. He wanted a partner who could understand and contribute to groundbreaking innovations. Noah was assigned to a mentor named Sarah, a lead engineer from SpaceX who had been part of the team that designed the Dragon capsule. She was smart, driven, and incredibly patient. She took the time to explain complicated concepts to Noah, breaking down everything from rocket propulsion to artificial intelligence, making it accessible for him without overwhelming him. At first, Noah felt like he was drowning in information. The projects Elon Musk's companies were working on were on a completely different scale than anything he had ever imagined. The more he learned, the more he realized how much he didn't know. I'm just a kid, he confessed to Sarah one day during a video call. What if I can't keep up? What if I mess up? Sarah smiled warmly. Noah, remember why we picked you. You don't need to know everything. You're here because of your creativity, your ability to think differently. And that's something no amount of education or experience can teach. It's in you. You just need to trust yourself. Noah nodded, still unsure but feeling a little more confident. Sarah was right. This was an opportunity that would push him beyond his limits. And even though he was terrified, a small part of him relished the challenge. Over the next few days, Noah worked tirelessly to keep up with the lessons. He'd spend hours each evening, watching tutorials, reading through technical papers, and brainstorming new ideas. His mom, always his biggest supporter, helped him set up a makeshift workspace in their garage, filled with wires, circuit boards, and tools. They worked side by side as Noah built prototypes and experimented with different designs. One evening, as Noah worked late into the night, he finally finished a small robot, his first real project as part of the collaboration. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, autonomous rover that could navigate around obstacles using basic sensors. But for Noah, it felt like a huge victory. He carefully connected the wires and pressed the power button. The rover hummed to life, its wheels moving steadily across the floor. "I did it," Noah whispered to himself, his voice filled with awe. "I actually did it." As he watched the rover move across the floor of the garage, Noah felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't much, but it was the first tangible result of everything he had been learning. It was proof that he could do this. The next day, during a video call with Elon's team, Noah presented his rover. "I finished it," he said, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. Elon Musk himself appeared on the screen. "Let's see it, Noah," he said with a grin. Noah held up the rover, showing it to the camera. It wasn't perfect. There were a few rough edges and some glitches in the programming, but it worked. It moved. It was a prototype, a first step, and to Noah, it felt like a breakthrough. "Impressive," Elon said, nodding. "You've made good progress, Noah. Keep building on this. We'll have a lot more to work on, but you're on the right track." The praise felt like a jolt of electricity running through Noah's veins. The world was watching him, and more importantly, Elon Musk believed in him. For the first time, Noah felt like he wasn't just some awkward, bullied kid. He was becoming part of something bigger, something important. He was helping to shape the future. As the weeks went by, Noah's confidence grew. He started collaborating with other young prodigies who had been selected for the project, each of them bringing their own unique skills to the table. Together, they worked on developing new technologies that could revolutionize space travel, energy, and even artificial intelligence. But Noah still couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was out of his league. Every time he'd sit in a meeting with Elon and his engineers, he felt like an imposter. Everyone else was so experienced, so knowledgeable. He was just a 10-year-old kid from a small town. What if they figured out that he didn't really belong there? One afternoon, during a team brainstorming session, Elon Musk addressed the group. "We're working on something big here, guys. We've set our sights on building a spacecraft that could reach Mars. We're going to need all hands on deck, and we need every one of you to think creatively." Noah was sitting at the back of the room, doodling on a piece of paper when Elon's eyes suddenly landed on him. "Noah," Elon said, his voice calm but direct. "What do you think? You've been quiet today. Got any ideas?" Noah's heart raced. "Oh no, he's asking me." He swallowed hard, glancing at the whiteboard covered in complex designs and equations. He felt a lump form in his throat. "I can't do this." But then, just as quickly, he remembered Sarah's words. "You're here because of your creativity." He took a deep breath and stood up, his hands shaking slightly. "I've been thinking about the rover I built," Noah began. "And what if we apply some of the same technology to help us build a more efficient propulsion system for the spacecraft? What if we could create a small, autonomous device that tests the engines in real time, making sure everything works before launch?" Elon raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Go on," he said, motioning for Noah to continue. Noah's mind raced as he explained the concept in more detail. The idea wasn't fully formed yet, but it felt right. He could feel the energy in the room shift as people began to listen. The other engineers nodded along, adding their own thoughts and suggestions. For the first time, Noah felt like he wasn't just a kid. He was part of something real, something important, and he wasn't about to let the chance slip through his fingers. As Noah continued his work on the project with Elon Musk and the SpaceX team, the pressure started to mount. The excitement he had initially felt was now mixed with anxiety. Every day, there was more to learn, more to contribute, and more to live up to. Noah was no longer just a kid tinkering with gadgets in his garage. He was now part of a massive undertaking, one that could change the world. And the weight of that responsibility wasn't lost on him. For weeks, Noah had been collaborating with the brightest minds in engineering, working late into the night, brainstorming new ideas, and constantly tweaking designs. His rover prototype had evolved into something much more sophisticated, and the propulsion system idea he had pitched was beginning to take shape. The team was excited about it, and they'd given him more responsibility, even asking him to lead some smaller sub-projects. But with that responsibility came an overwhelming sense of fear. What if he messed up? What if his ideas were wrong? What if he failed in front of the very people who believed in him? Noah spent the next few nights in his room, trying to work through his doubts. He couldn't afford to slow down, to make mistakes. He knew the stakes were high. The project he was working on could be the key to space travel becoming more accessible, and the entire world was watching. It was a lot to carry for a 10-year-old. One evening, after a particularly grueling video call with Sarah, where they discussed the next steps for the rover, Noah found himself staring at the screen, feeling defeated. Despite all his progress, there were still so many unanswered questions. So many things he didn't understand. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text message from his best friend, Jack, who'd been his only close companion before all of this. Jack had been there for Noah through thick and thin, especially when the bullying had been at its worst. Jack, dude, where have you been? Haven't heard from you in forever. I'm gonna call you. You good? Noah sighed and picked up his phone, pressing the screen to call Jack. The familiar sound of the ringtone comforted him as he waited for Jack to pick up. Yo, Noah. Jack answered, sounding like his usual, carefree self. You alive over there, man? Been so busy with all this Musk stuff, huh? Noah chuckled softly, though it didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, it's been crazy. I'm just a little overwhelmed, to be honest. There's so much to do, and I'm not sure I'm ready for all of it. Jack paused for a moment, then said, Man, you're doing something huge. Don't forget that. I know it's a lot, but remember why you're there. Musk didn't pick you by accident. You've got something they need. So just keep doing what you're doing. Noah felt his chest tighten. But what if I mess up? What if they figure out I'm just a kid who doesn't belong here? Noah, Jack said firmly, you belong there. You earned it. Look, I don't know what it's like working with billionaires and rocket scientists, but I know you. You've always been the guy who figures stuff out. Don't let that doubt get in the way. You got this. Noah smiled a little, feeling the weight on his shoulders ease just a bit. Jack always had a way of making things feel a little less impossible. Thanks, man. I really needed to hear that. Anytime, Jack replied. And hey, don't forget to have some fun too, okay? You're working with the guy who put cars in space. Take a minute to let that sink in. Noah laughed, the sound more genuine this time. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm working on a project with Elon Musk. That's pretty wild. The conversation lifted Noah's spirits, even if just for a little while. As he sat back in his chair, staring at the computer screen, he took a deep breath. The doubt didn't disappear entirely, but at least now, he felt like he had the strength to face it. The next day, Elon Musk himself called a meeting with the entire team to discuss the upcoming milestone for the project. The plan was to test the propulsion system that Noah had been working on. It would be the first real test of the system, and if it succeeded, it would be a monumental step toward creating a spacecraft capable of carrying humans to Mars. Noah was both nervous and excited. This was the moment he had been working toward, the moment where everything he had contributed would either succeed or fail. If the test went well, it could validate all of his work. If it failed, it would be a crushing blow. The test would take place in a few days, and Noah was tasked with overseeing the final stages of preparation. He was in charge of ensuring that the rover's sensor systems were properly calibrated to handle the test, and that the propulsion system was connected to the test vehicle correctly. The day before the test, Noah found himself in the lab late into the night, making final adjustments. His hands were shaky as he checked the connections again and again. Every wire, every circuit had to be perfect. One small mistake, and the test could fail. Elon Musk came into the lab around midnight. He was wearing his usual jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more like a regular guy than the billionaire genius everyone knew him as. But when he walked in, the room seemed to change. His presence was commanding, even in the quiet of the lab. How's it going, Noah? Elon asked, his voice calm and steady. Noah looked up, his heart racing. I think we're almost ready. Just need to double-check a few things. Elon walked over and stood next to him, watching as Noah made final adjustments. Take your time, he said. This is important, but I have no doubt you've got this. Noah nodded, swallowing hard. Thanks, Mr. Musk. I won't let you down. Elon smiled, his gaze softening. Noah, I'm not worried about you. This is the first time someone like you, someone young, has been in the position you're in, and I'm glad it's you. Your perspective is exactly what we need. Noah's chest swelled with pride, though the nerves were still there. Elon Musk believed in him. That was something he hadn't let sink in fully until now. This wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about the trust Elon had in him. The next day, the team gathered for the big test. The atmosphere in the control room was tense. Everyone was watching the monitors, waiting for the data to come in. Noah stood at the back, his heart pounding as the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, ignition. Elon's voice rang out, calm and composed. The countdown hit 0, and for a split second, there was silence. Then, the test propulsion system fired up, and the sensors on the rover began transmitting data back to the control center. Noah watched the screens, his breath catching in his throat. The rover moved forward, slowly at first, then faster as it gained momentum. The propulsion system was working. It was a success. The entire team erupted into cheers. Even Elon clapped Noah on the back, a broad grin spreading across his face. You did it, Noah. This is just the beginning. Noah stood there, stunned. The test had worked. His idea had worked. And for the first time in his life, he truly believed that he belonged here. Do you think Noah is ready for the next big step in the project? What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The success of the propulsion test sent a wave of excitement through the team. But for Noah, it felt like he had just taken a single step in a much bigger journey. The entire project seemed to stretch out before him like a vast, uncharted territory, full of unknowns, possibilities, and challenges. After the test, the SpaceX team worked quickly to assess the data. It was clear that Noah's propulsion system had potential, real potential, but it wasn't perfect. There were still kinks to work out. The sensors on the rover were reading some irregularities, and the propulsion system would need further adjustments before it could be scaled for a real spacecraft. Noah wasn't discouraged. If anything, the initial success motivated him even more. This wasn't about getting everything perfect on the first try. It was about making steady progress, learning from failures, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And in the midst of it all, Elon Musk remained supportive, encouraging Noah to keep thinking outside the box. The next few weeks became a blur of work, ideas, and teamwork. Noah found himself spending more time than ever with Sarah, going over the data, refining designs, and brainstorming solutions. They spent hours together in virtual meetings, discussing everything from advanced robotics to the intricacies of rocket engineering. But Noah wasn't just learning from Sarah. He was learning from everyone on the team, from the engineers at Tesla who were designing the solar panels for the spacecraft to the astrophysicists at SpaceX working on the trajectory calculations for the Mars mission. It was a never-ending stream of knowledge. Each conversation, each session, a chance for him to learn something new. As the days passed, Noah's self-doubt began to fade. The more he contributed, the more he realized that his ideas had value. No one saw him as just a kid anymore. He was a collaborator, an innovator, a key part of the team, and as the project progressed, it became clear that his role was only going to grow. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a crucial meeting to review the next phase of the project, Elon called Noah up to the front. The room fell quiet as everyone turned their attention to him. Noah, Elon said, his voice filled with genuine appreciation, you've done something remarkable here. Your work on the rover and the propulsion system has put us on a path that could revolutionize how we think about space travel. But there's still much to be done, and I believe you're the right person to take on the next challenge. Noah's heart skipped a beat. Next challenge? What did that mean? Elon continued, we're ready to move forward with testing the full-scale model of the Mars spacecraft. But this will require something entirely new, a new approach to engineering, design, and data analysis. You've got the mind of an engineer, Noah, and the heart of a true innovator. I'm asking you to lead the team on the next phase of the project. Noah's mouth went dry. Lead the team? Me? Sarah, who was sitting in the front row, gave him an encouraging nod. You're ready for this, Noah. I believe in you. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Elon's words sinking in. For a brief second, Noah wondered if they had made a mistake. Was he really ready for such a huge responsibility? But then he remembered everything he had learned, everything he had contributed so far. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was a part of this groundbreaking mission. "I'll do it," Noah said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. A wave of applause followed, and Elon gave him a confident smile. "Good. Let's get to work, then." Over the next few weeks, Noah threw himself into the new challenge. The Mars mission was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about designing cool technology. It was about creating a spacecraft capable of surviving the harsh environment of Mars, carrying astronauts safely to the Red Planet, and even building infrastructure to sustain them once they arrived. Noah's first task was to develop a new kind of propulsion system that could handle the extreme conditions of space travel. The current designs weren't efficient enough for long-term missions, and Noah knew that any improvement here could be a game-changer. He worked closely with the SpaceX engineers, diving deep into the details of rocket fuel, the mechanics of ion propulsion, and the physics of interplanetary travel. It was mind-boggling, but Noah loved it. Every new piece of knowledge he uncovered felt like an important piece of a giant puzzle. But the pressure was relentless. The higher-ups at SpaceX were breathing down the team's necks, demanding results. There were setbacks, many setbacks. Sometimes, Noah felt like the more he learned, the more he realized how much he still didn't know. One afternoon, after another round of frustrating data analysis, Noah sat down in his workspace, feeling completely drained. His brain felt like mush, and his body was sore from hours of sitting at the desk, working non-stop. "You okay, Noah?" Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker on his desk. Noah leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know, Sarah. I thought I was getting the hang of this, but every time I think I'm close to a breakthrough, something goes wrong." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I get it. This is tough. But remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. The pressure is heavy, but it's because we're on the verge of something incredible. And I believe in you. You've got the vision, the creativity. You'll get it right." Noah smiled, even though he felt exhausted. "Thanks. I don't know if I can handle it all." "You don't have to handle it alone. That's why we have a team." Her words were exactly what Noah needed to hear. In that moment, he realized that while he might be leading the charge, he didn't have to carry the weight of the world by himself. The team, the people around him, they were all there to support him. With renewed determination, Noah pushed himself to keep going. He stayed up late that night, refining his designs, double-checking the calculations. He wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when he had come this far. A few days later, the team gathered in the testing facility for the first full-scale test of the Mars spacecraft prototype. This was it, the moment they had all been working toward. Noah stood alongside Elon Musk, Sarah, and the rest of the engineers as they prepared for the test. The spacecraft sat before them, a massive, sleek structure that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. The sound of machines whirring and screens flashing filled the air. Noah's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the countdown clock. This test would determine whether all of their work was worth it, or if they had another setback to overcome. 3, 2, 1. Elon's voice was calm but filled with anticipation. Noah's breath caught in his throat as the rocket's engines roared to life. The spacecraft began to rise slowly into the air, lifting off the ground. The test was a success. They were closer than ever to their goal. Noah's mind raced, his heart swelling with pride. He had led this project. He had taken the first step toward making the impossible possible. And he wasn't stopping now. The euphoria of the successful liftoff was short-lived. As the spacecraft hovered above the test platform, a sudden alarm blared throughout the control room. "Warning! Unstable engine readings detected. Warning! Unstable engine readings detected." The disembodied voice echoed in Noah's ears, causing his stomach to drop. The team jumped into action, rushing to analyze the data. On the monitors, the engines of the spacecraft were flickering, struggling to maintain the stable thrust they had achieved moments earlier. The vehicle trembled slightly in midair, as though it was caught in a strong wind, despite the calm skies outside. Noah's heart pounded. This can't be happening. Not now, not after all the work we've done. He quickly scanned the data. His eyes narrowed. The readings on one of the main engines indicated a fuel imbalance, a dangerous issue. If they didn't fix it quickly, the spacecraft could go into a tailspin. Sarah, get me the calculations on the engine pressure valves. I think we're dealing with a flow issue, Noah barked, his voice steady but urgent. Sarah, who had been monitoring the systems, immediately dove into the data and confirmed Noah's hypothesis. The flow rate of the liquid oxygen was inconsistent, causing the engine to struggle and fluctuate in power. We need to shut it down before we lose control, Sarah said, her voice filled with tension. Noah nodded. He activated the emergency shutdown sequence, and within moments, the spacecraft's engines powered down, and it slowly descended back to the ground, safe but shaky. The room fell silent as the craft settled into place. Noah's mind was racing. They had just avoided a catastrophic failure, but the real work was only beginning. There was a problem, a big one, and they needed to fix it fast if they were to move forward with the mission. Elon stepped up beside him, looking at the monitors with a calm expression, though Noah could sense the gravity of the situation. You did the right thing by shutting it down, Noah, Elon said, his voice measured. Now we find out what went wrong. Noah nodded, trying to keep his cool, though inside, he was reeling. He had never experienced a moment like this before. It felt like everything he had worked for was hanging by a thread. The last few weeks had been filled with progress, and now this could set them back months, maybe even years. But Noah wasn't one to give up easily. He had been underestimated his entire life, and now was not the time to let fear dictate his future. I'll get the team to work on it immediately, Noah said, determined. We'll figure this out. The next few days were a whirlwind of data analysis, design revisions, and sleepless nights. Noah hardly left the lab, poring over every calculation, every system diagram. He worked side by side with the engineers, tracking down the root cause of the fuel imbalance. After hours of troubleshooting, they discovered that a small but crucial component in the oxygen flow system had malfunctioned, causing a temporary blockage that led to the instability in the engines. It was a seemingly minor issue, but in the world of aerospace engineering, even the smallest malfunction could have catastrophic consequences. It was a reminder that space travel wasn't just about big ideas and bold ambitions. It was about precision, attention to detail, and relentless perseverance. Noah felt a surge of relief as they replaced the faulty part and reran the tests. This time, the spacecraft hummed steadily, with the engines performing flawlessly. The team celebrated, but Noah knew they couldn't afford to get complacent. There would be more obstacles ahead, and each one would require more work, more learning, and more grit. As the dust settled, Noah took a moment to reflect. This wasn't the first setback he had encountered, and it surely wouldn't be the last. The road to Mars was paved with challenges, but if anything, this experience had taught him the importance of resilience. Even in the face of failure, the mission moved forward. He thought about his journey up to this point. How, just a few months ago, he was a kid being bullied at school, dismissed by everyone around him. Now, he was leading a team at the forefront of space exploration. It wasn't just about the science, the tech, or even the mission. It was about proving to himself and to the world that he belonged, that he could rise above the odds. Later that evening, Noah received a message from Elon. It was simple, but it meant the world to him. Great work on the test. Keep pushing forward. We're all in this together. Noah sat back in his chair and smiled. It was a reminder that despite the pressure, despite the setbacks, he wasn't alone. Elon believed in him, the team believed in him, and most importantly, he was starting to believe in himself. The next phase of the project was even more ambitious, the spacecraft's life support systems. While the propulsion system was crucial, if the astronauts couldn't survive on Mars, none of it would matter. The team worked tirelessly on developing a sustainable, closed-loop environment that could provide oxygen, water, and food for astronauts for the duration of the journey. But as they began testing these systems, Noah quickly realized that the challenges didn't stop at propulsion. Life support systems in space were complex, and any malfunction could be deadly. Oxygen levels, temperature regulation, waste management, they all had to work perfectly, with no room for error. During one late-night testing session, an unexpected issue arose with the temperature regulation system. The craft's internal temperature began to fluctuate wildly, rising and falling beyond safe limits. This posed a huge risk to the integrity of the entire spacecraft. As the team scrambled to identify the problem, Noah felt a wave of frustration wash over him. Why does everything feel like it's falling apart right now? Sarah, sensing his frustration, walked over to him. Hey, we've got this. We're a team, remember? We'll solve this, just like we always do. Noah nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, you're right. We'll figure it out. The next few days were a blur. The problem with the temperature regulation was traced to an issue with the heat exchangers in the cooling system. It was a minor glitch, but it had caused major disruption. Noah felt a sense of relief as they patched it up and tested the system again. This time, it worked flawlessly, but the incident weighed on him. Each setback, no matter how small, felt like a giant obstacle. They were moving forward, but the road ahead seemed longer and harder with every problem that arose. One afternoon, as Noah was sitting at his desk reviewing the test results, Elon walked in. "How's it going, Noah?" Elon asked, leaning against the doorframe. Noah looked up. He was exhausted, but there was a fire in his eyes. "It's been tough, but we're getting there. It's all part of the process." Elon smiled. "That's the spirit. You've come a long way, Noah. We're all behind you, and I know you'll lead us to Mars." Noah felt his heart swell with gratitude. Elon had always believed in him, even when he wasn't sure if he believed in himself. "We're doing this together," Noah said, the words filled with a new sense of purpose. "And we're going to make it happen." After the issues with the temperature regulation system, Noah's confidence was shaken, but it didn't break him. He had seen firsthand how quickly things could go wrong in the world of space engineering, but he had also witnessed the team's resilience and determination. Every setback was just another opportunity to learn and improve. Over the next few weeks, the team continued to make progress, slowly but surely. They resolved one issue after another, each more complicated than the last. Propulsion systems, life support, power generation. Everything needed to work together seamlessly for the Mars mission to be a success. But with every problem solved, another challenge appeared on the horizon. The weight of the responsibility Noah carried as the leader of this ambitious project grew heavier with each passing day. The stakes were higher now. It wasn't just about building a spacecraft anymore. It was about preparing for the future of humanity. The success of this mission could pave the way for interplanetary travel, forever changing the course of history. One evening, as Noah sat alone in the conference room, poring over the latest data on the spacecraft's environmental controls, Sarah walked in. She had a stack of papers in her hands and a look of excitement on her face. "Got something for you," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. Noah looked up, his tired eyes meeting hers. "What's this?" "I think I've cracked it," Sarah said, a hint of triumph in her tone. She placed the papers on the table in front of him. "The new design for the fuel-to-energy conversion system. If we integrate this into the power generation system, we could reduce energy waste by 30%. Noah blinked, slowly digesting her words. 30%. That was a huge improvement. If they could get that kind of efficiency, the spacecraft would have more than enough power for the long journey to Mars. It could even mean the difference between survival and failure for the astronauts aboard. "That's incredible," Noah said, his voice thick with awe. "Are you sure it'll work?" Sarah grinned. "I ran the simulations. It's solid. I mean, there might be some tweaks we'll need to make, but the foundation is sound." Noah stood up, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "This could change everything. Let's run it through the full system test tomorrow." The next day, the team gathered once again in the control room for the most critical test yet. This time, they would test the new fuel-to-energy conversion system as part of the spacecraft's integrated power system. The goal was to simulate the spacecraft's operations over a long-distance mission and assess how the new design affected its overall efficiency. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The room fell silent as the spacecraft powered up. Noah watched intently as the engineers monitored the systems. The lights flickered on, the engines hummed to life, and the systems began to stabilize. The new fuel-to-energy conversion system was working flawlessly. The energy output was more efficient than they had ever anticipated. In fact, it exceeded all their projections. The spacecraft's power supply was now more than sufficient to support the life support systems, propulsion, and every other critical function needed for the mission. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. Noah grinned, feeling a rush of excitement and pride. It wasn't just about the technical achievement. It was the realization that they were closer than ever to making the Mars mission a reality. For the first time, Noah truly believed that this project could succeed. They had overcome so much already, and now they were on the verge of a breakthrough that could change everything. Later that day, Elon Musk called a meeting with the entire team. They gathered in the large conference room, where the mood was a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The results of the test had been overwhelming. It was clear that the Mars mission was now more than just an idea. It was within their grasp. "Great work, everyone," Elon began, his eyes scanning the room. "We've made incredible progress. The new fuel-to-energy conversion system is a game-changer, and I have no doubt that this mission is going to be a success." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "But we're not done yet. There are still many hurdles to overcome. The launch window is coming up, and we need to ensure that everything is in place. We need to be ready." Noah sat back in his seat, his mind racing. He had always known that space travel was a risky business, but now the pressure felt more real than ever. They had come so far, but the mission wasn't over yet. They still had to get the spacecraft into orbit, and then the real challenge, getting it to Mars, would begin. "I know you're all tired," Elon continued, his voice softening slightly, "but I need everyone to dig deep. The world is watching, and this mission is bigger than any of us. Together, we're going to make history." The room erupted in applause. It was a moment of triumph, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility they carried. The weight of it was heavy on Noah's shoulders. The future of humanity's presence on Mars was now in his hands. That evening, Noah found himself standing on the balcony of the SpaceX headquarters, staring out at the sprawling city below. The stars above seemed to be a reminder of just how far they still had to go. He was closer than ever to making the Mars mission a reality, but the journey ahead was still full of unknowns. He thought about how far he had come, from a bullied, ignored kid in school to being part of a team that was pushing the boundaries of human exploration. He remembered the moments of doubt, the struggles, the failures. But he also remembered the support of his team, the belief that Elon had in him, and the way Sarah always had his back when things got tough. "Noah," Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts. "You okay?" He turned to see her standing behind him, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights. "I'm just thinking," Noah said, turning back to the stars. "This is bigger than anything I could have imagined. We've come so far, but the hard part is still ahead." Sarah stepped closer, her presence a comforting reminder that he wasn't alone in this. "We'll make it," she said simply. "Together." Noah nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. There was still a long road ahead, but with the team at his side, he knew they could make it. He wasn't just leading a mission to Mars. He was part of something that could change the world. And that was worth every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt. They were going to make history. What do you think will happen next? With the new breakthrough, will Noah and the team finally be able to launch their mission to Mars? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The days leading up to the Mars mission launch felt like an eternity. The excitement was palpable, but so was the pressure. The team had made incredible strides, but they were approaching the point of no return. There could be no more mistakes, no more delays. Every test, every system, every component had to be flawless. Noah was feeling the weight of it all. It was hard to sleep, hard to focus on anything other than the mission. He spent his days poring over the spacecraft's designs, double-checking every figure, every formula, every procedure. His nights were spent in meetings with Elon, Sarah, and the other engineers, finalizing the countdown checklist. The launch window was rapidly approaching, and there was still so much to do. "We're almost there, Noah," Sarah said one evening as she dropped a file on his desk. "The last round of system checks are complete. Everything looks good." Noah looked up from the stack of papers he had been sifting through. Sarah's face was tired but determined. There was no doubt in his mind that she was just as invested in this mission as he was. They had come so far together. "I know," Noah replied, though his voice betrayed his unease. But we've hit so many roadblocks already. What if something goes wrong at the last minute? Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We've been working on this for years, Noah. We're ready. We've made sure every system is as close to perfect as possible. And even if something does go wrong, we'll fix it. We always do. Noah nodded, but the unease remained. There was no turning back now. They were preparing to send a spacecraft to Mars, a journey of over 300 million miles. The whole world would be watching. And with it came a terrifying responsibility. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for the team but for the future of human space exploration. A week before the launch, Elon gathered the team in the command center. It was a room filled with blinking monitors and the hum of machines, but tonight it felt like the calm before a storm. The entire mission crew was there. Engineers, astronauts, specialists from every department. Elon, Noah began, standing up to speak. We've completed all the final checks, and everything is on track. The spacecraft is ready. The crew is ready. All that's left is to put it all into motion. Elon gave a small nod. His eyes, usually sharp and focused, were a little softer tonight. There was a quiet confidence in his expression. You've done incredible work, Noah, Elon said. You've led this team through the hardest challenges. The rest of the world is going to see that in a few days. You should be proud of everything you've accomplished. Noah smiled faintly. He wanted to feel proud, but the magnitude of the mission was so overwhelming that it almost felt unreal. We're about to do something no one has ever done before. But it's not just about the science, Elon continued. It's about humanity's future. We're making history, and it's because of all of you. The room erupted into applause. But for Noah, the applause didn't feel real. All he could think about was the terrifying unknowns ahead. The launch, the long journey to Mars, the landing, and the months spent on the Red Planet. This was no longer a dream. It was a reality that would change everything. The night before the launch, Noah stood outside the SpaceX headquarters, looking up at the stars. He had always been captivated by space, but tonight, they seemed different, closer, more meaningful. For the first time in his life, Noah realized that he was part of something bigger than himself. This mission wasn't just about his career or his personal journey. It was about the future of mankind. He wasn't the bullied kid from high school anymore. He was someone who had defied the odds, someone who had led a team to the edge of space. And now, he was on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. As Noah stood there, Sarah joined him, a soft smile on her face. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "No," Noah replied, glancing at her. "It's hard to believe we're really doing this. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong." "I know the feeling," Sarah said, her voice calm and reassuring. "But we've done everything we can. We've tested, we've fixed problems, and we've pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Tomorrow, we launch. And there's no turning back." Noah looked at her, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Sarah's confidence was contagious. She had always been his rock throughout this journey, always there to remind him that they could do it. And now, standing side by side, they were ready for the final step. "Tomorrow," Noah repeated softly, a smile tugging at his lips. "Tomorrow, we make history." The day of the launch arrived with the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. The team assembled early, gathering in the control room to begin the final preparations. The spacecraft, now fully fueled and ready, stood on the launch pad, a colossal monument to human ambition and ingenuity. The entire world was watching. Noah could hear the soft hum of the machines around him, the quiet murmurs of the crew, and the occasional click of keyboards as final adjustments were made. But amid the quiet chaos, there was an undeniable sense of excitement. This wasn't just a mission for the team. This was a mission for all of humanity. The countdown began, and Noah felt his pulse quicken. 10, 9, 8. The voice of the mission commander echoed over the loudspeakers. 7, 6, 5. Noah's eyes were fixed on the screen in front of him, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel. He could feel the weight of the moment, the anticipation building in his chest. The world was holding its breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. The engines roared to life, and the spacecraft shot up into the sky, leaving behind a trail of fire and smoke. The ground trembled as the force of the launch reverberated through the air, and for a brief moment, everything stood still. Then, the spacecraft was in the air, climbing higher and higher, a shining symbol of human achievement. The roar of the engines slowly faded as the spacecraft moved farther from Earth, heading toward the stars. Noah stood in the control room, watching the spacecraft climb into the heavens. The world had just taken its first step toward Mars. For a moment, everything felt surreal. He could hardly believe it. After all the struggles, all the setbacks, all the doubts, he had led this team to this moment. And now, the journey was finally beginning. The roar of the engines was now a distant memory, replaced by the hum of the spacecraft's systems and the eerie quiet of deep space. The countdown had led to the moment of liftoff, and the Mars mission was officially underway. The spacecraft, now hundreds of miles above Earth, continued its steady ascent, leaving the atmosphere behind. Noah watched the telemetry on his screen, the numbers moving in a slow, rhythmic dance. The spacecraft had passed through the hardest part of the launch, surviving the initial thrust, the climb through the atmosphere, and the separation from the launch vehicle. Now it was coasting into the cold vacuum of space, the vast, empty expanse stretching out before them. The journey to Mars would take about 7 months, a grueling test of endurance for both the spacecraft and the astronauts aboard. While the immediate pressure had subsided with the successful launch, Noah knew the hardest part was yet to come. "Status update?" Noah asked, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Sarah, standing beside him in the control room, glanced at the monitor. "We're on course. All systems are nominal. The propulsion system is working within parameters, and the life support system is stable." "Good," Noah replied, nodding. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. This was it. They were on their way. The spacecraft was now en route to Mars, and there was no turning back. For the first time in the mission's history, it was no longer about the design, the tests, or the breakthroughs. It was about the astronauts, the brave souls who would make the journey and pave the way for humanity's future on another planet. Noah's thoughts turned to them. Captain Amelia, the seasoned astronaut who had been preparing for this mission for years. Dr. Sam, the scientist who had spent decades researching the effects of space travel on the human body. And Noah's old friend, Liam, the mission specialist who had been by his side from the beginning. Meanwhile, aboard the spacecraft, Captain Amelia and the crew were settling into their new routine. The ship was silent except for the soft beeping of the systems and the occasional voice over the intercom. The crew members had been preparing for this mission for years, but nothing could truly prepare them for the feeling of weightlessness, the endless void surrounding them, or the isolation they were about to experience. Amelia stood at the command station, staring out the observation window. The Earth had already disappeared from view, now a faint speck in the distance. She had seen the planet from space before, but this time felt different. This time, they weren't just observing. They were leaving. "I can't believe we're really doing this," Liam said, joining her at the window. His voice was tinged with awe, but there was a hint of nervousness in it as well. Amelia smiled at her friend. "It's real now. We're heading to Mars. We've trained for this. We know what to do." Liam nodded, but didn't take his eyes off the window. "Yeah, but it's one thing to train for something. It's another to actually be doing it." Amelia could relate. The gravity of the situation was settling in for everyone. They weren't just heading to Mars to study the planet. They were embarking on the first true step toward making Mars a second home for humanity. The pressure of that responsibility weighed heavily on all of them. Back on Earth, Noah kept a close watch on the spacecraft's progress. As the hours stretched into days, he felt the familiar tension creeping back. There was always something that could go wrong, some system that could fail. But for now, everything seemed to be on track. It wasn't just the mission that kept him up at night. It was the deeper question, the one he had been grappling with since the beginning of this journey. What comes after Mars? Sending humans to Mars was just the first part of the equation. Establishing a sustainable colony, making it a home for future generations, would require decades of work and planning. Noah's mind often wandered to the possibility of building not just a base on Mars, but a thriving society. He couldn't help but think about how they would one day terraform the planet, make it habitable, and create a new civilization out there in the stars. But that was the future. For now, they had to survive the journey, land safely, and begin their research. The next several months would be a test of endurance, not just for the spacecraft, but for the crew's mental and physical health. Deep space was a harsh environment, and isolation would be the greatest challenge of all. As the days turned into weeks, the crew aboard the spacecraft settled into a routine. There were moments of joy, when they completed a particularly tricky system check or when they shared a meal together in the galley. But there were also moments of tension. The confinement of the spacecraft, the constant hum of the systems, and the never-ending expanse of space could sometimes feel suffocating. One evening, Dr. Sam, the medical officer, called for a routine checkup on the crew's physical health. The long-duration spaceflight was already beginning to take a toll on their bodies. Muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and sleep disturbances were all part of the territory when it came to space travel. But Sam had prepared the crew for this. Their bodies would adapt, but it would take time. "How's everyone feeling?" Sam asked, scanning the crew's vital signs on his tablet. "Same as yesterday," Captain Amelia replied with a slight smirk. "A little stiff, but nothing too bad. I think we're all getting used to the weightlessness." Dr. Sam nodded, checking the data. "I'll need to keep an eye on your bone density. The lack of gravity is going to have an impact over time. It's a good thing we've got our supplements." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Bone density? Sounds like I'll need to be careful not to snap in half while I'm doing my spacewalks. Just make sure you don't try to push off too hard when you're in the airlock," Sam teased. The laughter was a welcome distraction from the loneliness of space. For a brief moment, the crew was able to forget how far they were from Earth and focus on the bond they had formed as a team. Back in the control room on Earth, Noah and Sarah were reviewing the latest data from the spacecraft systems. There had been a minor issue with the communication relay, a small glitch that caused a brief loss of signal. It was quickly fixed, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that things were going too smoothly. The silence of space, the vast emptiness, made him uneasy. It wasn't just the crew's safety that concerned him. It was the unknown. "We're doing fine for now," Sarah said, glancing at the monitor. "But I've got a feeling there's something we're missing. Space is full of surprises." Noah didn't respond immediately. He knew what Sarah meant. There was a quiet danger in space that no amount of preparation could ever truly account for. No one had ever been this far before, and they were heading into a new frontier where anything could happen. And so, the days dragged on. The spacecraft sped through the void, and the crew endured the solitude and the isolation. The distance between Earth and Mars grew smaller with every passing hour, but the journey felt infinite. As they entered the final stretch of their journey, they couldn't help but wonder, what awaited them on Mars? The days aboard the spacecraft were becoming a blur, a series of routine checks, meals, and short bursts of communication with Earth. The crew had grown accustomed to the weightlessness, the constant hum of the systems, and the odd sensation of being so far from home. The thrill of the launch had faded, and now they were simply living day by day, inching closer to their destination. Noah sat in the control room on Earth, his eyes fixed on the live feed from the spacecraft. Sarah was beside him, running through the daily diagnostics. The data was coming in smoothly, and for now, everything seemed stable. But deep inside, Noah felt the tension building. They were nearing Mars. The spacecraft had already passed the halfway point of the journey, and the true challenges of the mission were just beginning. The crew would soon begin the slow, nerve-wracking approach to the planet. It was one thing to orbit a planet. It was another to land on it. "How's the crew holding up?" Noah asked Sarah, his voice low as he focused on the telemetry. Sarah glanced over at the screen. "They're doing well. No signs of significant fatigue or stress, but it's only going to get harder from here. The closer they get to Mars, the more pressure they'll feel. The landing is going to be the hardest part." Noah nodded, rubbing his eyes. "We'll be ready. We have to be." On the spacecraft, Captain Amelia, Liam, Dr. Sam, and the rest of the crew were already preparing for the approach. The vast, infinite space outside the windows was now gradually shifting. A small, red dot had become visible on the horizon, growing steadily larger with each passing hour. It was Mars. For a moment, Amelia just stared at the sight in awe. Mars had been a distant dream for so long, something talked about in scientific circles, something that felt impossibly far away. But now, it was right there in front of them. The barren, dusty surface seemed almost unreal, like a backdrop from a science fiction movie. It was nothing like Earth, but it was the next step for humanity. "We're really here," Liam said, his voice filled with disbelief. "After all these years, after all the talk, we're actually here." Amelia didn't answer immediately. She was too busy staring at the planet, calculating their approach. The gravity of the moment was starting to settle in. They weren't just astronauts going on a mission. They were pioneers, the first humans to lay eyes on the red planet up close. They were about to be part of something bigger than themselves. "All right, everyone," Amelia said after a moment, breaking the silence. "Let's start getting things in order. We need to go over the landing procedure one last time. Dr. Sam, I want you to double-check the life support systems. Liam, make sure the rover systems are operational. We'll be taking it out the moment we touch down." Dr. Sam nodded, but his face was tense. The unknowns of the landing were something no one had truly prepared for. There had been simulations, countless hours of training, but no one could predict the exact variables they would face once they reached the surface. "I've got this, Captain," Sam said, forcing a smile. "Everything's in working order. Just focus on getting us there." Amelia gave him a curt nod. "We've got this." As the spacecraft closed in on Mars, the crew went through the final phases of their approach. They needed to slow down the spacecraft and enter Mars' atmosphere at the precise angle to ensure a safe landing. The spacecraft heat shields were ready to absorb the friction and heat from the entry, and the parachutes were primed to deploy at just the right moment. The pressure was mounting. From the control room on Earth, Noah was watching closely. He and Sarah were tracking the spacecraft's trajectory, running through every possible scenario in their minds. The landing was always the riskiest part of the mission, and while they had designed the spacecraft with every possible safety feature, they couldn't account for everything. "Status?" Noah asked, his voice betraying a hint of anxiety. Sarah tapped a few keys on the console. "They're entering Mars' atmosphere now. Everything's within range. Heat shields are holding up." Noah let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But this was just the beginning. They were still in the thick of it. Inside the spacecraft, the crew was glued to their stations, their bodies tense, every sense on high alert. Amelia's hands gripped the control panel, her fingers steady despite the growing anxiety in her chest. The heat from the atmosphere outside was palpable, and the ship shook as it entered the Martian atmosphere. They were decelerating at a rapid pace, and every second felt like an eternity. "We're almost there," Amelia muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Liam was watching the data intently. "Heat shields are holding. We're still on track for landing." Sam was busy checking the life support systems. His eyes flicked nervously to the clock as they approached the critical moment when the parachutes would need to deploy. "Systems look good," Sam said, trying to mask his own tension. "Parachutes should deploy in 3, 2, 1. A brief, sharp jolt ran through the spacecraft, followed by the sound of the parachutes opening with a violent snap. For a moment, the entire craft seemed to lurch as it slowed even further. But it wasn't over yet. There was still the final descent to the surface. The crew held their breath as the spacecraft began its final approach to the Martian surface. "Deploying landing gear," Amelia announced, as the craft's thrusters kicked on to guide them the rest of the way. The lander, still shaking from the forces at play, descended through the thin Martian atmosphere, the ground rushing up to meet them. The final few seconds felt like hours. Every person aboard the spacecraft was bracing for impact. There was a quiet tension, a mix of fear and exhilaration, as the countdown to touchdown began. And then, it happened. The lander hit the surface of Mars with a soft, muffled thud. The whole spacecraft jolted slightly, and for a moment, it seemed like everything might fall apart. But the systems held. The descent had been successful. "We've landed," Amelia breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the weight of what had just happened was too much to process. They had done it. They had made it to Mars. Back on Earth, the control room erupted in cheers as the news came through. Noah stood there, staring at the screen, his heart racing in his chest. They had done it. The mission was a success. The spacecraft had landed on Mars, the first human presence on the red planet. "We did it," Noah said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah turned to him, a proud smile on her face. "Noah, we really did it." But even as the crew celebrated their success, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. They had landed on Mars, but now they had to survive. And no one could predict what awaited them on the surface of the red planet. The first few moments after the landing were filled with silence. The crew had successfully touched down on the Martian surface, but it was hard to believe they were truly here. Mars, the fourth planet from the sun, stretched out before them, its reddish surface barren and unyielding. The lander's legs had secured them firmly on the ground, and the parachutes that had slowed their descent flapped gently in the wind, a reminder of just how fragile their position was. Inside the spacecraft, the crew exchanged tentative glances. There was a sense of awe mixed with anxiety. After months of preparation, the months-long journey, and the tension of the descent, they were finally standing on the precipice of history. They were the first humans to set foot on Mars. But now the real challenge began. Amelia was the first to speak. She was calm, but her voice carried an undercurrent of emotion. "This is it, team. We've made it. But we have to stay sharp. We've only just begun." Liam nodded, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the console's lights. He was already adjusting the control panel, setting up the rover and other equipment that would be needed for their exploration. "We need to begin the unpacking and make sure everything's good to go. Life support is holding, but I'm sure you all felt that shake during landing." "We're fine," Dr. Sam replied, his voice steady but still carrying a note of tension. He was already checking the data on his tablet, tracking the crew's vital signs and the systems that kept them alive in this alien environment. "But we need to move quickly. I'll monitor everyone's health closely while we get the habitat set up." Amelia checked her wrist pad, where the countdown to Mars' first sunrise was ticking down. "We've got a few hours before the temperature drops. Let's make use of the daylight while we can." The Martian day was almost 24 hours, just a little over Earth's, but the nights were bitterly cold, and they had little time to waste. Noah and Sarah were watching everything from Earth, the telemetry coming in steady. The first wave of emotions had passed. The landing had been smooth, and now the real work began. Ensuring the crew's safety, setting up the habitat, and beginning the research that would define the mission's success. "How are they?" Noah asked, his voice low but filled with concern. Sarah was focused on the data streaming in from the lander's sensors. "They're fine for now. The equipment checks out. Life support systems are functioning. They'll need to get the habitat module set up as soon as possible, though. Mars' atmosphere isn't exactly friendly." Noah nodded, glancing back at the screen showing the crew's vital signs. They were all stable for now, but no one could predict how long that would last. Every hour on Mars was a new challenge. Back on Mars, the crew had begun their work. Amelia, Liam, Dr. Sam, and the others were moving efficiently, unloading equipment from the lander, checking the seals on their suits, and preparing for the next steps. They knew the risks, and they knew they couldn't afford to make mistakes. Mars had a way of humbling the most prepared astronauts. The terrain around them was unlike anything they had seen before. The reddish soil, the jagged rock formations, the vast, empty plains. It all seemed like a world suspended in time. There were no clouds in the sky, no winds to carry dust storms. Mars was both beautiful and desolate, a planet that held both promise and danger. "We need to get the habitat up soon," Captain Amelia said, scanning the horizon. "We can't afford to wait too long. The temperature will drop rapidly once the sun sets." Liam was already assembling the rover. "I've got this covered. We'll be able to move around the surface and gather some preliminary data." "The rover's ready to go." Amelia nodded, watching as the rover's systems powered up. The crew had spent months preparing for this moment, but there was still an air of caution among them. The rover would help them explore the surrounding area and take samples, but everything had to be done carefully. One wrong move, one unplanned action, could jeopardize the mission. "Let's move out," she ordered. "We need to get samples from the soil and rocks before the temperature drops too low. Dr. Sam, take point. Liam, you're on the rover. The rest of you, Keep an eye on the habitat setup. The crew moved into action, each person focused on their tasks. As they began to step outside, the first real moment of weightlessness hit them. Mars' gravity was only about 38% of Earth's, which meant their movements felt more fluid, almost like they were walking on the moon. Liam drove the rover across the Martian surface, the tires crunching against the loose dirt. The wheels kicked up small plumes of red dust, which scattered into the thin Martian atmosphere. The rover's instruments came online, and the crew began collecting data on the soil, air, and rock samples. Meanwhile, Captain Amelia and the others were working on securing the habitat. The pressure was mounting. They had a narrow window of time before the Martian night set in, and they needed to ensure that the shelter would be airtight and insulated. Back on Earth, Noah was pacing around the control room. Every passing minute felt like an eternity. He was confident in the crew's abilities, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The mission had gone too smoothly so far. Something had to go wrong eventually. "Sarah, check the temperature readings again," Noah said, his voice tense. "Something doesn't feel right." Sarah glanced up from the console, her brow furrowed. "I'm seeing the same numbers. Temperature's low, but nothing out of the ordinary for Mars. It's well below freezing at night, but that's expected. We've accounted for that." Noah nodded, but his unease didn't dissipate. The surface of Mars was unforgiving. The crew's survival depended not just on the habitat, but on their ability to adapt to this hostile environment. As Amelia and her team finished securing the habitat, they gathered around to take stock of their progress. The Martian surface stretched out before them like a vast, empty wilderness. It was hard to believe that this was where humanity's future might be shaped. But at the same time, it was exhilarating. They were standing on a planet that had been out of reach for centuries, and they were the first to call it home. Liam, having completed the rover checks, turned back to Amelia. "We've gathered some preliminary samples. We should have enough to start analyzing the soil for potential signs of past life. But we need to go deeper, beyond just the surface." Amelia glanced over at the rover's data, already seeing signs that the surface was indeed rich in minerals that could one day support life. "We'll need to start drilling, but not yet. First, let's get the habitat operational. That's our priority." As she spoke, a soft beeping interrupted her thoughts. It was Dr. Sam's communication device. "Captain, you'll want to see this." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. The tone in Sam's voice was unusual, urgent. "What is it?" she asked, walking toward him. "I'm getting some odd readings," Sam replied, his eyes scanning the monitor. "There's something in the air, some fluctuation in the atmospheric pressure. It could be a glitch, but I think we need to investigate." A chill ran through Amelia's spine. It was just the beginning. Mars was unpredictable, and it had secrets to reveal. But she wasn't about to back down now. Amelia's eyes locked onto Dr. Sam's screen as the words "atmospheric fluctuations detected" blinked ominously in red. The temperature in the habitat module was holding steady, but something else was off. This wasn't just a minor glitch. It was a sign of something far deeper, something they hadn't anticipated. "Sam, what's causing it?" Amelia asked, trying to keep the calm in her voice, though the unease was spreading through her chest like wildfire. Sam's fingers danced over the controls, pulling up more data. His brow furrowed. "I'm not sure yet, but the fluctuation isn't regular. It's erratic. It's almost like there's an invisible pulse in the atmosphere, something affecting the pressure. It could be an anomaly, or," he trailed off, eyes narrowing, "or it could be a sign of something we haven't detected yet." Liam, who had just finished calibrating the rover's instruments, turned sharply at Sam's words. "What do you mean by something we haven't detected yet?" His voice was tight with tension, the thought of something unknown lurking beneath the surface sending a wave of dread through the crew. Amelia stepped forward, her voice steady but with an edge of concern. "Dr. Sam, we need answers. The last thing we need is some hidden factor we didn't plan for." "I know, Captain," Sam replied, his fingers still flying over the console. "I'll cross-check the atmospheric sensors with the rover's readings. There could be something in the soil affecting the air pressure. But right now, I think the best course of action is to check the rover's environment samples and see if they reveal anything unusual." Amelia nodded, trying to shake off the creeping sense of danger that was slowly building. Liam, make sure the rover's running optimally. Sam, double-check the atmospheric readings from Earth. If this is something we missed, we need to know right now. The crew moved quickly, but there was a palpable shift in the air. It was as though Mars itself was watching them, waiting to reveal its secrets. Back at the Mission Control Center on Earth, Noah and Sarah were glued to their screens. The fluctuating atmospheric readings from Mars had set off alarm bells in their minds. They were used to anomalies in space missions, but this one felt different. Noah looked at Sarah, his face grim. If they're encountering something we don't know about, something we didn't plan for, this could get dangerous fast. Sarah leaned over her console, analyzing the data streams coming in from the rover and habitat. It could be a natural phenomenon, like a dust storm or underground gases leaking into the atmosphere. But we've already accounted for both of those in the mission parameters. Mars' atmosphere is thin, but stable enough for now. If something's changing that, then we have a serious problem. Noah exhaled sharply, his mind racing. We need to contact them immediately. If this is a risk to the crew, we can't afford to waste any time. Sarah nodded, dialing into the communication system that would link them to the astronauts on Mars. Back on Mars, as the team worked tirelessly to analyze the data, the quiet sound of the rover's wheels crunching over the Martian soil became a subtle reminder of how fragile their position was. They had to figure this out, and quickly. Amelia stood with her arms crossed, scanning the horizon. The soft red dust of Mars settled in the air around them, painting the landscape in an eerie glow. Liam was back in the rover, furiously analyzing the samples it had taken earlier. I'm seeing something strange in the soil readings. It's almost as if the composition is reacting to our presence. Reacting? Amelia asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean to the rover's sensors? No, Liam said, looking up with a mixture of confusion and concern. I mean it's reacting to the physical disturbance we're causing. The pressure is changing. It's subtle, but it's there. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Are you saying the ground is shifting? Liam didn't answer immediately, instead turning back to the data. His fingers hesitated over the rover's console as he pulled up more readings. The rover had gathered soil samples from several meters down, but the deeper layers showed an unexpected shift in pressure that he couldn't explain. This isn't normal, Liam finally said. Something is moving beneath the surface. It's not like an earthquake, but more like a slow expansion or contraction. The pressure fluctuations, they could be coming from underground. Amelia took a deep breath, her mind racing. Sam, you're seeing this, right? Yeah, Sam said, studying the data. It doesn't match anything we've seen in our simulations. If there's something moving underground, we need to get ahead of it. The last thing we want is for the habitat to be compromised. Amelia's mind flashed back to the Earth-based preparations, the countless simulations and models they had run, all designed to prepare them for Mars' harsh conditions. No one had mentioned anything about underground phenomena like this. They had been ready for storms, temperature swings, and the lack of water, but not this. All right, we need to get back to the habitat, Amelia said, her voice calm, but with an edge of urgency. Liam, pack up the rover and get everyone back inside. We're not taking any chances until we know what we're dealing with. The crew moved quickly, gathering their equipment and preparing to return to the safety of the habitat module. As they climbed into the rover, the Martian landscape stretched endlessly before them. The silence was almost suffocating, and Amelia could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Meanwhile, back at Mission Control, Noah's voice crackled over the radio. Captain, do you read me? Amelia responded immediately, trying to sound confident despite the growing sense of unease. Loud and clear, Noah. We've encountered some unusual atmospheric fluctuations. The rover's readings suggest something is happening below the surface. Understood, Noah replied, his voice steady. We've been monitoring the situation from here, and we'll keep you updated. Just stay cautious and don't take unnecessary risks. We're here for you. Amelia nodded, though she knew that Earth could only do so much. The crew had to make the decisions on the ground, and their safety relied on their ability to adapt to the unknown. As the rover bounced back across the Martian soil toward the habitat, The looming red horizon seemed to press in on them. The silence was deafening. For the first time since landing, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that Mars was hiding something far more dangerous than they had prepared for. The rover sped toward the habitat module, its wheels kicking up Martian dust as the crew hurriedly made their way back. The unsettling atmosphere had taken hold, and with every mile, the tension grew heavier. Amelia gripped the edge of her seat, her eyes scanning the barren landscape. Mars, which had once seemed so fascinating and inviting, now felt like a looming presence, an entity with hidden secrets just waiting to be uncovered. Almost there, Liam's voice broke through the silence, the sound of his fingers tapping at the rover's controls cutting through the tension. We'll be back inside in just a few minutes. Amelia gave a nod, though her mind was far away. Beneath the surface of Mars, something was stirring. She didn't know what it was, but she could feel the weight of it, an unspoken warning. The fluctuations Sam had detected weren't just a glitch in their systems. No, there was something deeper at work here. Back at the habitat, the rest of the crew had been securing the module and running diagnostic checks, trying to keep everything running smoothly. Dr. Sam was already at the door, waiting for them to arrive. "We need to move fast," Sam said as they disembarked the rover. "I've checked the atmosphere readings again. There's still that strange fluctuation. Whatever's causing it might be getting stronger." Amelia nodded, her mind sharp despite the weight of fatigue. "All right, let's regroup. We'll analyze the situation further once we're inside. First priority, make sure the habitat is secure." They moved inside, where the temperature was steady and the systems were humming quietly. Despite the external dangers, the habitat was their lifeline. It was their shield against the hostile environment of Mars. At least, that was the hope. Liam immediately pulled up the rover's data, setting it down on the table. "These readings aren't normal, Amelia. The pressure changes are increasing, and there's a pattern to it. I've never seen anything like it." Amelia stood beside him, her face tense. "What kind of pattern?" "It's as if something is moving under the ground. At certain intervals, there's a noticeable spike in pressure. It's not random, and it's not just atmospheric. It's like there's a pulse, something rhythmic, coming from deep beneath the surface." Dr. Sam, who had been examining the data with an analytical gaze, spoke up. "It could be a geological event, maybe some sort of subterranean fault line or tectonic activity. But even so, we should be cautious. Mars doesn't have tectonic plates like Earth, but it does have volcanic activity. The readings are suggesting something far more unusual." Liam turned to Amelia, his face pale. "What if it's not natural? What if this is something artificial?" The room fell silent. The possibility, while still far-fetched, hung heavily in the air. Could there be an undiscovered structure deep under Mars' surface? Something created long ago, hidden from human eyes for millennia? "Let's not jump to conclusions," Amelia said, her voice steady, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "We need more data before we make any assumptions. Right now, our top priority is understanding this pressure anomaly. We don't know if it's natural or something else entirely, but we can't afford to ignore it." As the crew huddled around the table, analyzing the rover's data and the atmospheric readings, a sense of urgency began to settle over them. Time was running out, and the Martian night was fast approaching. Every decision had to be made quickly and carefully. If they were wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic. Back on Earth, Noah and Sarah had been monitoring the team's data closely, their concern growing with each passing moment. They could hear the tension in Amelia's voice as she reported the pressure fluctuations, and they knew that the crew on Mars was facing a danger they hadn't anticipated. "This doesn't look good," Noah muttered, rubbing his forehead. "If the pressure changes continue, it could affect their life support systems, even the habitat itself. We need to know what's causing this before it gets worse." Sarah was already on the phone with their team of scientists and engineers. "We're analyzing the data from Earth's end, but we haven't seen anything like this before. I'll get the geophysics department to run some simulations. In the meantime, we need to prepare for the possibility of a situation beyond our control. Let's not forget, the crew on Mars is completely isolated." Noah nodded. "Keep me posted. I'll call the astronauts again. We need to make sure they're fully aware of the risks." Inside the habitat, the crew was working diligently, checking the integrity of the life support systems, verifying the oxygen levels, and making sure that the radiation shielding was functioning. Meanwhile, Sam was still monitoring the data on his tablet, his eyes flicking between the atmospheric readings and the rover's environmental scan. "There's something I'm noticing," Sam said, his voice quiet. "The pressure fluctuations aren't just increasing. They're becoming more concentrated in one area. It's like there's a pulse, almost like it's radiating from a single point deep under the surface." Liam's gaze hardened. "A single point? So, you're saying something beneath the ground is emitting a force of some kind?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Sam replied. "And I think it's time we figure out where exactly this pulse is coming from." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "How do we do that?" "We need to drill," Sam said. "We can't just rely on surface readings anymore. If something is beneath us, we need to go deeper, gather data at different depths. We've got the equipment, and I think now is the time to use it." Amelia hesitated for only a moment. Drilling into the Martian surface was risky, especially with the unknown fluctuations. But they couldn't stay in the dark any longer. "All right, let's get the drill set up. But we'll start slow. We don't know what we're dealing with, and I'm not about to risk everyone on a hunch." Liam and Sam began preparing the drilling equipment, and the team moved into action. The tension in the habitat was palpable. Each step, each action taken, felt like a step into the unknown. As the drill's motor hummed to life, the crew could hear the low, rumbling sound as it began to pierce into the Martian soil. The pressure readings on their consoles fluctuated again, but this time, the crew didn't flinch. They knew that whatever was happening beneath them, they would uncover it soon. They had no choice. Amelia stood by, her arms crossed, as she watched the drill go deeper. "This is it," she said softly. "We're about to find out what Mars is hiding." Just as the drill began to break through a deeper layer of rock, a strange, high-pitched sound echoed through the module. It was faint, but unmistakable. "What was that?" Liam asked, his voice sharp with surprise. "I'm not sure," Amelia replied, feeling a shiver run down her spine. "Sam, check the sensors. Is there any seismic activity?" Sam quickly checked his screen, his eyes widening in disbelief. "No, there's no seismic activity, but the sound. It's like a vibration through the rock. It's coming from below." Suddenly, the drilling stopped. The sound, still faint but growing louder, reverberated throughout the habitat. Something beneath the surface of Mars was waking up. "What do you think is causing the strange vibrations beneath Mars? Could the crew be on the brink of discovering something far bigger than they anticipated?" Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is happening beneath the red dust? The faint, eerie hum reverberated through the habitat's walls, growing louder with every passing second. The crew's breath caught in their throats as they exchanged nervous glances, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. For a moment, the only sound was the drilling machine's motor, now strangely still, as if it too had paused to listen. "What is that sound?" Liam whispered, his voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. Sam, his fingers furiously typing into the system, looked up at the others. His face was pale, his brows furrowed in concentration. "I don't know. I've never heard anything like this before. It's not coming from the drill, that much is certain." Amelia stood with her arms crossed, her mind racing. What could this be? Mars had always been a planet of extremes, of silence and dust storms. There was nothing alive here, nothing that could explain this sort of phenomenon. Or was there? "We need to get deeper," Sam said, his voice urgent now. "Whatever is down there, it's starting to respond to the drill. It's almost like it's alive." The thought sent a chill down Amelia's spine. "Alive?" she echoed, trying to sound skeptical, but the way the vibrations seemed to pulse beneath their feet made it hard to dismiss the idea entirely. "I know it sounds crazy," Sam continued, his fingers tapping quickly on the screen, "but I think whatever is down there is active in some way. The vibration pattern, it's too consistent, too rhythmic, like something is pulsing in sync with the drill." Liam, ever the scientist, adjusted the rover's equipment from the inside of the habitat. "Okay, if something's down there, we need to be careful. If it's a natural phenomenon, like seismic activity, we can handle it. But if it's something else, we might be dealing with something far more complex. Amelia nodded, her mind grappling with the idea of what they were uncovering. They had no choice but to push forward. The question now wasn't whether they should investigate, but how they would contain the potential danger if things went wrong. Sam, start recording the vibrations, she ordered. Liam, prepare a contingency plan. We don't know what we're dealing with, and I want to make sure we can evacuate if necessary. The team got to work. Sam activated the seismic sensors, his fingers moving over the controls as he started compiling the data. The vibrations were becoming more frequent now, and he had to adjust the sensitivity to ensure they didn't miss anything. He glanced over to Amelia. If this keeps up, we may need to pull back. I'm seeing some erratic spikes in the data. Liam, his eyes darting from the rover's monitors to the drilling control panel, frowned. I'm seeing it too. There's an increase in pressure building up. It's like something is blocking the drill, resisting it. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. It was almost as if the planet was fighting back. Back on Earth, Noah and Sarah were growing increasingly worried. The readings they were receiving from Mars were unlike anything they had expected, and they could tell that the crew on the ground was facing something dangerous. Noah rubbed his eyes, his mind working through the possibilities. This is bad, Noah muttered to Sarah. The crew is encountering something far deeper than we imagined. If they're getting vibrations from below, they're not just dealing with an environmental hazard. They're potentially dealing with a buried structure, something alive. Sarah shot him a sharp look. Alive? She asked, her voice flat with disbelief. Are you saying? I don't know yet, Noah cut her off, running a hand through his hair. But if it's not a natural event, then it's something else entirely. We've got to get a team of experts on this and fast. He grabbed the intercom and called for an immediate meeting. In a few moments, a team of geologists, engineers, and the best minds in planetary science would be gathered, trying to figure out just what could be causing these strange readings. But it was clear. Whatever was happening on Mars, they had no time to waste. Back in the habitat, Amelia stood at the control panel, her mind working rapidly. The vibrations were now more distinct, like the rhythmic beating of a distant drum. The drill had stopped, but the strange hum continued. It was almost as if it were calling to them. And yet, there was no way to be sure of what they were dealing with. Amelia, Sam said, breaking through her thoughts. The data, it's not matching anything we've seen on Mars before. These vibrations, if they're emanating from deep underground, then the structure could be much larger than we anticipated. What structure? Liam asked, looking up from his readings, his voice tinged with unease. Are you suggesting there's something artificial down there? A structure buried under Mars? It's possible, Sam replied, his voice unwavering, but we can't be certain yet. The energy readings are unlike anything we've encountered. If there's a structure, it's made of materials that don't show up on any of our standard scans. We might be dealing with an alien relic, or something far stranger. The thought of an alien structure on Mars was enough to make Amelia's skin crawl, but she knew better than to let fear take control. Mars was a place of unknowns, and this mission had always been about discovery. The danger they faced now was simply a new chapter in that story. We need to go deeper, Amelia said firmly. I'm not backing off now. Let's see what's really down there. Sam nodded and worked quickly, recalibrating the sensors for a more in-depth analysis. The drill was already in place, but it would take time to break through the next layers of rock. Suddenly, the vibrations began to grow more intense. The walls of the habitat began to shake, slightly at first, but then with more force. The crew braced themselves, their instincts screaming that this was no ordinary seismic event. What the hell is happening? Liam shouted, gripping the console. The vibrations were no longer just a hum. They were now a full-on tremor. Amelia's voice came over the intercom, commanding and calm. Hold on, everyone. We need to stay focused. Sam, what's happening to the drill? Sam's eyes were wide as he checked the system. The drill. Something's pulling it in. It's not stopping. We're losing control. Liam grabbed the controls for the drill, trying to stabilize it. This isn't possible. It's like like something below is grabbing the drill and pulling it deeper into the ground. We need to shut it down. But it was too late. The drill continued to penetrate deeper into the Martian surface, its drill bit rotating with increasing speed. The vibrations grew more violent, and the crew felt the unmistakable feeling of something rising from beneath them. Then, the lights flickered. A low, guttural sound filled the habitat. The crew gasped as the ground shook beneath them, and the drill's lights flared to life, revealing a massive, dark shape looming beneath the Martian soil. It was ancient, and it was alive. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently. The humming sound that had once been faint now felt like a freight train barreling through the station, shaking everything in its path. The walls of the habitat creaked ominously, and every display screen inside the rover blinked with erratic, distorted images. The drill, now caught in the grip of some unknown force, continued its descent deeper into the Martian crust, as if drawn by an irresistible force. "Get it under control," Amelia barked, her voice sharp with authority, though her heart was pounding wildly in her chest. Sam scrambled at his console, sweat dripping down his forehead as he tried to override the system. "I'm trying. The drill systems are being overridden. It's like something down there is responding." Liam jumped to his side, offering assistance. "If we don't stop it now, it might destroy everything. It's already beyond the safe depth." Amelia's breath hitched in her throat. What had they uncovered? The vibrations weren't just seismic. They were like the planet itself was alive. Her mind raced. What could this mean? They had thought the drill was simply collecting samples. But now, it felt as though it was awakening something ancient, something powerful. "Hold tight," Amelia said, trying to maintain composure. "We need to stay calm. Sam, can you override the drill's safety systems?" "I'm working on it." Sam's voice was strained. His fingers danced across the touchpad, every second feeling like an eternity. But there's something strange. The control systems are being blocked. It's as if the drill is communicating with whatever's below. Liam stepped back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Communicating with what? Are you telling me that something alive is down there?" Amelia didn't respond immediately. Her mind was already racing. Could they be dealing with an alien life form? Or was this some kind of massive, ancient machine built eons ago? Her gut told her it wasn't a natural occurrence. There was too much precision to the way the drill was being pulled deeper, like a well-coordinated response to a stimulus. "I don't know," Amelia said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to stop the drill now. Whatever it is, we can't just dig into the unknown without knowing what we're dealing with." But as she spoke, the vibration intensified, the eerie hum turning into a deep, almost musical frequency, vibrating through their bones. The habitat's lights flickered again, and the ground shook with such intensity that the crew was thrown off balance. Sam's control panel went haywire, flashing cryptic readings faster than he could process them. I can't stop it," Sam said, his voice tight with panic. "Whatever it is, it's overriding our controls. The systems are in a feedback loop. It's like the drill wants to go deeper." The entire team stood frozen for a moment. The realization was sinking in. Whatever was down there, it had no intention of letting them turn back. Back on Earth, Noah sat at the command center, his eyes locked on the live feed from Mars. The readings were getting worse by the minute, and the tremors had now reached dangerous levels. This wasn't a drill failure or a simple seismic disturbance. There was something actively responding to the crew's actions. "Sarah," Noah muttered, his voice tense, "we need to inform the crew. This is escalating far quicker than we thought. We don't know what's down there, but whatever it is, it's not happy with them drilling into Mars." "I'm on it," Sarah replied, her face pale as she made the necessary connections. "We need to pull them out. This is beyond their scope now. We can't risk losing them." They had no idea what was lurking beneath the surface of Mars, but they could sense the growing danger. And yet, there was no way of stopping the crew without provoking an even worse reaction from whatever was below. Back in the habitat, Amelia exchanged glances with her team. The moment had come, the point of no return. The drill was now being pulled deeper into the ground, and with every second, they risked pushing things too far. The crew could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. This was no longer an exploration mission. It had turned into a desperate battle to survive. "We're losing control," Liam said, his voice low, as he watched the monitors. The drill was almost at its limit, beyond the point where any human intervention could stop it. It was as if the planet itself had reached out and wrapped its unseen tendrils around the machinery. Amelia quickly made a decision. "Sam, if you can't stop the drill, then we need to manually pull it out. Now." But just as she gave the order, the room went dark. The lights flickered once, twice, and then extinguished entirely. A cold silence fell over the crew, and the only sound was the thumping of their hearts in their chests. "Amelia?" Sam's voice was barely audible in the darkness. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Amelia replied, her pulse quickening. "Stay calm, everyone. Let me see if I can reboot the system." Before she could take a step, the ground beneath them shifted again. A loud, guttural sound, like an ancient roar, echoed through the walls of the habitat. The entire structure shook violently, throwing them off balance. Amelia grabbed the nearest support beam to steady herself, but she couldn't suppress the feeling that something massive was stirring beneath the surface of Mars. It wasn't just vibrations anymore. It was as though something was pushing back. Then, through the dim red emergency lights, they saw it. A shadow moving through the walls, dark shapes skittering along the rock. "What the hell?" Liam gasped, his voice rising in disbelief. Amelia's heart raced as she felt the air grow heavier. Something was coming up. Whatever was below Mars, it wasn't staying hidden any longer. "We need to get out of here," Sam said urgently, but Amelia was rooted to the spot. The magnitude of what was happening began to sink in. What had they uncovered? Amelia stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. She was determined not to let fear dictate their next move. She reached for the emergency comms. "Control, this is Captain Amelia Pierce. We are experiencing..." But before she could finish, a loud crack echoed through the base. The walls shook again, even more violently this time, as if the planet itself was splitting open. A piercing, almost deafening noise filled the habitat. The sound of something huge moving beneath the surface of Mars. "Get to the rover. Now!" Amelia shouted. The crew scrambled toward the exit, but the shaking grew worse. Every step felt like it might be their last. The base trembled again, more violently this time. Every surface around them seemed to pulse with a low, menacing hum, as if the very foundation of Mars was coming alive. Amelia's heart raced, every nerve in her body on high alert. The crew had made their way to the rover, scrambling through the narrow hallways of the habitat as the ground beneath them shook with an intensity that threatened to rip the structure apart. The walls of the habitat groaned under the pressure, and a strange, guttural sound reverberated through the metal corridors, a sound so deep it seemed to come from the very core of the planet. The lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. "Amelia, we need to get out of here." Liam's voice was tight with fear as he grabbed her arm, urging her forward. "Now!" They reached the rover, but just as they were about to climb inside, a loud crack echoed from deep within the Martian surface. The ground shook with such force that the rover itself rattled in its place. The crew staggered, struggling to maintain their balance as a wave of terror washed over them. "Get in! Move!" Amelia shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. They scrambled into the rover, slamming the hatch shut behind them. Sam immediately began powering up the systems, his fingers flying over the controls. The rover's engines roared to life, but as he tried to drive forward, the vehicle lurched and stalled, as if something was holding it in place. "What the hell?" Sam cursed, furiously tapping at the console. "The systems are fine, but it's like we're being pulled back." Amelia's eyes widened in realization. It wasn't just the drill. Whatever force was at work beneath the surface was now targeting them. "Pull us out, Sam," she ordered, her voice urgent. But just as Sam hit the accelerator, the ground beneath the rover cracked open with a deafening boom. A massive rumble filled the air, and suddenly, a dark shadow emerged from beneath the Martian soil, so massive that it seemed to dwarf everything around it. "Holy God!" Liam whispered, his voice filled with awe and terror. A massive, serpentine shape began to rise from the ground, its dark form slowly emerging from the fractured surface of Mars. Its body was covered in strange, armor-like plates, and as it continued to emerge, it seemed to pulse with a rhythmic, living energy. The sound it made was like a chorus of thunder, deep and resonant. Amelia's heart skipped a beat as she watched the massive creature unfurl itself, its enormous body stretching toward the sky. It was unlike anything they had ever imagined. It seemed to have no clear shape, no true form, but it radiated an undeniable presence, something ancient, powerful, and possibly hostile. Is that a creature? Sam's voice trembled as he stared in disbelief at the monstrous entity unfolding before them. I don't know, Amelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's definitely not a natural phenomenon. Liam was glued to the window, his face pale. This thing, whatever it is, it's massive. It looks like it could crush us with a single move. The creature's head, if it could even be called a head, was now fully exposed, its multiple jagged eyes glowing a faint, eerie green. It seemed to be scanning the area around it, as though it was aware of their presence. The vibrations they had felt earlier had only intensified now, like a signal being broadcasted from deep within the creature's body. Sam looked at Amelia. We need to move now. Whatever this thing is, it looks like it's waking up. If it's hostile, we're sitting ducks out here. Amelia clenched her fists, torn between fear and determination. She knew they couldn't just leave. They had to figure out what this was. Sam, get us closer, she ordered, her voice firm. We need to understand what's going on here. If we pull back now, we might never have another chance to study this creature. Liam spun around to face her. Are you insane? We're talking about something the size of a skyscraper, probably older than any living thing on Earth, and you want to get closer? We have no choice, Amelia said, her jaw set. If we don't learn more about this, we won't survive. And Mars will never be the same. Back on Earth, the situation was rapidly escalating. Noah and Sarah were in the command center, desperately trying to communicate with the crew. The data from Mars was chaotic, inconsistent, and full of anomalies. They could see the crew's desperate attempts to escape, but no one could predict what would happen next. The strange energy signatures coming from Mars had turned from erratic pulses to an almost rhythmic beat, like a heartbeat. What the hell is happening down there? Sarah said, her voice trembling with anxiety as she watched the live feeds. I don't know, Noah replied, gripping the edge of his console. This isn't just a seismic event or a malfunction. This thing is more than just an anomaly. It's responding to them. It's alive. And if it's alive, that means it's aware. I think we're dealing with something ancient, Sarah said, her mind racing. This could be a living organism or a sentient structure. If that's the case, we have no idea how to communicate with it, or if we even can. Noah ran a hand through his hair. Whatever it is, it's big. It's intelligent, and it's not happy with them being on Mars. If we don't get the crew back to the surface, they might not make it. The two of them exchanged a look. Their worst fears were coming to life. Back on Mars, Amelia and her team were inching closer to the behemoth as it loomed over them. The rover's engines struggled against the pull of the creature, but Sam managed to get a few meters closer. The creature's dark form towered over them, its alien features like nothing they had ever seen. Its massive, segmented body seemed to shift and pulse, as though it was breathing in sync with the vibrations in the air. Amelia, Sam said, his voice barely audible over the humming of the rover's engines. Whatever this thing is, it's not just passive. It's reacting to the drill, to us being here. It's like it's alive and trying to communicate or defend itself. Amelia narrowed her eyes. It's almost as if it's been asleep for millennia, and now we've woken it. Liam, unable to tear his eyes away from the creature, murmured, It looks like it's growing, becoming more active. The creature's giant, glowing eyes shifted in their direction. Then, for a brief moment, it stared directly at them, its gaze feeling as though it could pierce through their very souls. Amelia held her breath. Whatever was happening, it was beyond anything she had ever imagined. And then, suddenly, the creature moved. It shifted its massive body in a way that made the ground quake, and a strange, harmonic sound filled the air, like a song or a call, resonating from deep within its body. Amelia realized with a start, this was communication. The creature's strange, harmonic sound reverberated through the rover's metal shell, vibrating deep into the crew's bones. The unsettling, melodic pulse was unlike anything they had ever heard. It felt almost like a call, a deep, primal signal sent from the heart of the Martian crust, as if the creature was reaching out to them, trying to communicate in its own incomprehensible way. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know whether to run or to stay and listen. The creature had clearly noticed them, and its attention was unsettlingly focused. It was as if it had been dormant for centuries, perhaps millennia, and now, the arrival of the drill and the crew had woken it. "Amelia," Liam whispered, his voice trembling. "What are we supposed to do? We're not equipped for something like this. We can't even understand what it is." Amelia didn't respond immediately. She was still trying to process everything. The creature's eyes, those eerie, glowing orbs, had locked onto them with such intensity, it felt like it could see into their very souls. It was aware of them, and the strange vibrations filling the air felt like a response to their presence. It was as if Mars itself had been waiting for something, waiting for them. The air inside the rover was thick with tension. Sam kept his hands firmly on the controls, his face drawn with concentration. The rover's engines were still struggling against an unseen force, but they were making progress. They were moving closer to the creature, but every inch felt like they were drawing closer to a precipice. "Amelia, we need to make a decision. This thing could kill us in an instant, or it might just ignore us," Sam said, his voice shaky. "I don't like the fact that it's aware of us. We're sitting ducks out here." Amelia took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She had trained for situations like this. Well, maybe not exactly like this, but she had been in tense, high-stakes scenarios before. Her instinct told her that panicking would get them nowhere. The creature wasn't attacking, at least not yet. In fact, it was just standing there, waiting, pulsing, humming. "Maybe it's not hostile," Amelia said slowly, her voice firm despite the uncertainty clawing at her insides. "Maybe it's just reacting. It might be confused. We don't know its intentions yet, but we can't assume it's an enemy just because it's big and alien." Liam frowned, staring out at the massive creature, its segmented body shifting with eerie grace. "It doesn't feel like it's friendly. But what do we do? We're out here alone on Mars, with no backup and no real understanding of what's going on." The creature's head, if you could call it that, suddenly moved slightly, its multiple glowing eyes narrowing in their direction. It emitted a low, rumbling sound that made the ground beneath the rover tremble. The vibrations intensified, the air growing thicker with each passing second. It was as though the creature was waiting for something. For a response? An answer? Amelia didn't know what to do. She had no answers, only a gut feeling that this creature was not an immediate threat, at least not in the way they expected. "Let's not make any sudden moves," Amelia said, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. "We need to observe it. It's alive, and it's intelligent. This could be our only chance to understand what it is and how it works." Sam turned to her, looking frustrated. "You're asking us to stay here while this thing gets closer to us? Look at it. It could kill us with one swipe. It's huge." "I know," Amelia said, her eyes still locked on the creature's massive, pulsating form. "But what if it's not a threat? What if it's just curious? We don't know what it wants. But we can't assume it's hostile unless we have a reason to. Let's take this slow." The humming from the creature's body reached a new crescendo, and the rover shook again, more violently this time. The creature's body began to shift, as though it was moving forward, advancing toward them. Amelia's stomach lurched. She could feel the ground itself trembling beneath them. "Amelia!" Sam shouted. "We need to get out of here. Now!" But Amelia was already moving, her instincts driving her to make a bold decision. "No, Sam. We need to try something." Before anyone could protest, Amelia activated the rover's comm system, broadcasting a signal directly to the creature. It was a desperate move, and she had no idea if it would work. She didn't even know if the creature could understand their technology. But there was a chance, a small one, that they could establish some form of communication. If they didn't try, they'd never know. Hello? Amelia's voice crackled over the rover's speaker. Can you hear me? We come in peace. We don't want to harm you. The hum from the creature stopped. The vibrations ceased abruptly, and for a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a low, resonating sound rippled through the air, deep and powerful, like a wave passing over them. It was as if the creature was thinking, calculating. Amelia held her breath, waiting for a response, a sign that the creature understood. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the humming returned. But now, it was different. It was slower, more measured. It felt like a language, a series of tones and frequencies that rippled through the air. For the first time, Amelia felt the vibrations less like an attack and more like an attempt at communication. The creature's head tilted slightly, its glowing eyes focused intently on the rover. The humming grew softer, more melodic, and the ground beneath them seemed to pulse in time with the rhythm. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. It's responding, she whispered, her eyes wide with realization. It's actually responding to us. But before they could process the implications, the creature made another move. It shifted its massive body, and the ground beneath them quaked violently. The rover jerked, sending the crew tumbling into one another. What the hell? Liam shouted as he grabbed hold of the rover's dashboard. Is it attacking? The creature's movements weren't violent, but they were immense. Its body undulated beneath the surface, shifting the Martian landscape around them. The ground trembled as if the creature was stirring something buried deep beneath the surface of Mars. Hold on, Sam shouted, desperately trying to keep the rover steady. We need to move now, before it gets any worse. But Amelia's eyes were locked on the creature, and she wasn't sure if it was a threat anymore. What if this was just the beginning of something far greater? The rover's engines roared as Sam fought to keep control. The massive creature's movement beneath the Martian surface had created an unbearable pressure, making every inch of progress feel like a monumental struggle. The ground trembled violently, as though the very planet itself was awakening, its bones shifting and grinding against each other. Sam, we need to move now, Amelia shouted, her voice urgent as the rover jolted forward once more. Her hands gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. I'm trying. Sam's voice was strained, his focus completely on the controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his eyes darted to the monitors. The rover's systems are being pushed to their limits. We're barely staying on course. I don't know how much longer this thing can hold up. Amelia's heart pounded as she looked out the window at the creature. It had become more than just a terrifying presence. It was alive, and it was aware of them. The creature's massive form, segmented and pulsating, loomed over them like a living nightmare, its glowing eyes tracking every movement. And then, as if to punctuate the fear and uncertainty, the ground under them shuddered again. The creature's massive body seemed to ripple beneath the surface, and a deep, reverberating sound filled the air, like the growl of a beast far below. Liam leaned forward, his face pale. What's it doing? What is it trying to tell us? I don't know, Amelia answered, her voice barely above a whisper. The vibrations from the creature were now rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It was as though the creature was trying to communicate, but how could they possibly understand? They were so close now. The rover had crept forward, inch by inch, and they were just a few meters from the creature's immense body. Amelia had to act. She couldn't just sit back and wait for things to spiral out of control. Sam, she said firmly, stop the rover. Sam shot her a confused look. What? Are you crazy? We need to get out of here before it. Just stop, she cut him off. If it's trying to communicate with us, we need to listen. We can't run from this. Not now. Reluctantly, Sam slammed his foot on the brake. The rover lurched to a stop, its engines whining in protest. The silence that followed felt oppressive, heavy with the weight of the unknown. The only sound now was the low, throbbing hum from the creature below, Amelia took a deep breath. The tension in the air was suffocating, but she knew they had no other choice. If they were going to survive this, they had to make sense of what was happening. The creature's massive, segmented body shifted again, and the vibrations intensified. Amelia's eyes locked onto the creature's glowing eyes. It was almost as if it were staring directly at her, its immense gaze penetrating the rover's thick metal walls. There was a moment of stillness, a quiet that seemed to stretch on forever. And then, just as she was beginning to wonder if she had made a mistake, the creature reacted. The ground around them shook again, but this time, it wasn't violent. It was controlled, deliberate. The creature's body shifted beneath the surface once more, but it wasn't coming toward them. Instead, it seemed to be creating a path, an opening, like a massive door that was being carved from the depths of Mars. Is it making a path for us? Liam asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. I think it is, Amelia said, staring at the creature in disbelief. It's showing us a way through. The creature's rhythmic hum deepened, almost as though it was guiding them, inviting them forward. Its glowing eyes flickered, and for the first time, Amelia felt a strange sense of connection. Like the creature wasn't just a mindless force of nature, but something sentient, something that could understand them. Amelia, we can't just sit here. Sam's voice was sharp. If it wants us to go, we need to move, before it changes its mind. Amelia hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. Could this creature really be offering them a way forward, a way deeper into the Martian landscape? Was it a trap? Or was it a chance? An opportunity they couldn't afford to miss? Let's go, Amelia said, her voice steady with resolve. If it's offering us a path, we take it. But we need to be careful. We don't know what we're walking into. With a deep breath, Sam powered up the rover's engines again, and they began to move forward, cautiously. The vibrations from the creature beneath the surface continued, but they weren't as intense now. It was almost as if the creature was guiding them, moving out of the way to make room. The rover rolled forward, inching its way toward the opening in the ground that the creature had created. As they approached, Amelia felt the weight of what was happening. They were no longer just explorers on Mars. They were participants in something far greater, something ancient and incomprehensible. What lay ahead could change everything. The opening before them widened as they drew closer, revealing a dark, cavernous space beneath the Martian surface. The air felt different here, thicker, colder, with an almost metallic quality that made Amelia's skin prickle. Liam gasped, "What is this place?" Amelia couldn't answer. She was too focused on what lay ahead. The walls of the cavern were slick with some kind of dark substance, and the atmosphere felt heavy with a strange energy. The light from the rover illuminated only a fraction of the vast expanse before them, but Amelia could sense that they were on the edge of something monumental. The creature's vibrations had led them here, deeper into Mars than any human had ever gone before. And then, just as they reached the edge of the opening, the creature's humming stopped. A deep silence fell over the entire area, leaving the crew in stunned stillness. "We're here," Amelia said softly. "Whatever this place is, it's where it wanted us to go." The rover's lights cast long shadows as they descended into the cavern. The air inside was thick, unlike anything they had felt on the surface of Mars. It carried a metallic tang, as if the very atmosphere itself was charged with an energy they couldn't comprehend. The walls of the cavern shimmered faintly, reflecting a dim, otherworldly glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the creature's hum from above. "This is impossible," Liam whispered, his voice barely audible in the suffocating silence. "What is this place?" Amelia didn't answer right away. She couldn't. Her mind raced, trying to process what they were seeing. They had just crossed into the heart of Mars, a place no human had ever ventured. The walls of the cavern were lined with strange, smooth stone-like material that seemed to shift subtly as if alive, pulsing with a quiet, almost imperceptible energy. And then, as the rover crept deeper into the cavern, the path before them widened. The ground flattened, and the air felt colder, more stagnant. Something was here, something ancient, something that didn't belong to Mars. "Stop," Amelia said suddenly, her voice urgent. Sam, who had been driving cautiously, slammed his foot on the brake, and the rover lurched to a halt. The crew looked around, trying to make sense of their surroundings. But there was something unsettling about the stillness in the air. Amelia's gaze locked onto the far wall of the cavern. Her heart skipped a beat. In the dim light, she saw it, a shape, faint but unmistakable, a carving, a massive, intricate design etched into the rock, spanning the entire width of the cavern wall. "Look," she whispered, almost afraid to break the silence. She gestured for the others to follow her gaze. "There's something on the wall." Liam's eyes went wide. "What is that? Is it a symbol?" It was more than a symbol. The carving was unlike anything they had ever seen. It depicted a sprawling scene, some kind of ancient civilization, but it was unlike anything from Earth. Alien in every sense of the word. Figures, humanoid but not quite, stood before a giant structure, their arms raised toward the sky. The figures had elongated limbs and heads, their eyes large and black, resembling the creatures. The structure behind them seemed to pulse with a strange light, much like the creature above. I think this is a history," Amelia said, her voice low. "A history of the creature. And maybe of us." Sam frowned. "You think this civilization knew about it? About this?" "I think so," Amelia said, stepping closer to the wall. "This could be evidence of a civilization that encountered this creature. Or maybe created it." As she reached out to touch the wall, the vibrations beneath their feet intensified, and a low hum filled the air, resonating deep in their chests. The creature above was reacting to their presence, but this time, it didn't feel threatening. It was as if the creature recognized them, acknowledged their place in this alien history. "What's happening?" Liam asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. "What is it doing?" But Amelia wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the carvings, tracing the lines with her fingers. As her hand grazed the wall, the hum seemed to shift. The carvings began to glow, slowly, faintly, at first. But as she touched them, the light intensified, filling the cavern with a soft, pulsing glow. The ground trembled beneath them. The cavern seemed to come alive. "It's responding to us," Amelia murmured, stepping back, her eyes wide. "It's like it's recognizing us." Suddenly, a deep rumbling sound echoed from the heart of the cavern. It wasn't just the vibrations from the creature above. It came from within the cavern itself, as if something ancient and dormant was being stirred. The walls seemed to groan, and the air grew thick with an electric charge. Sam's voice broke through the tension. "Amelia, I think we need to get out of here. This doesn't feel safe." But before anyone could move, the ground beneath them shifted. The cavern floor began to split open, sending a massive shockwave through the entire space. The rover bucked, nearly throwing them all from their seats. As they scrambled to regain their balance, a massive, metallic door began to rise from the ground where the floor had cracked. Amelia stared at the door, her breath caught in her throat. It was unlike anything they had seen before. A massive, ancient mechanism, seemingly of alien design, emerged from the earth. The same strange symbols etched into the walls were now visible on the door. It looked as though it had been waiting for centuries to open. Liam's voice cracked with panic. "What the hell is that?" The door slowly creaked open, revealing an inner chamber. The light that leaked from within was not the same soft glow as the carvings. It was brighter, more intense, and it hummed with an undeniable force. It was like nothing they had ever encountered, and yet Amelia felt drawn to it. Something about it called to her. This is it," she whispered, almost reverently. "This is what the creature was leading us to." They watched in awe as the door fully opened, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The air was thick with an energy that vibrated through their bones. The walls of the chamber were covered in the same alien symbols, and strange machinery pulsed in the center, surrounded by a strange, glowing substance. "What is all of this?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Amelia admitted, "but I think we've just uncovered something bigger than we ever imagined." A deep, resounding pulse echoed from within the chamber, and the light intensified. It was as though the entire cavern was alive, responding to their presence. The creature's hum had stopped, replaced by a new, deeper resonance that seemed to fill the air. "It's like it's waiting for us," Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. He, too, seemed drawn to the opening, as if the alien presence inside was beckoning them forward. Amelia stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. This was it. They had discovered something ancient, something so old. It had been buried beneath Mars for millennia. And now, they had the key. The creature had brought them here, guided them to this point, and whatever was in that chamber, it was waiting for them. "It's a choice," she said softly, her voice steady despite the enormity of the situation. "We go in, and we find out what's inside. But we need to be careful. We don't know what we'll uncover." They all stood there, staring at the doorway, each of them aware of the gravity of the decision before them. This was no longer just a mission. It was something far more important. They were standing on the threshold of history, and Amelia knew that what they did next could change everything. The door groaned as it crept fully open, revealing an expansive chamber beyond, bathed in a pale, otherworldly light. The atmosphere inside felt charged with energy, and the air hummed as if the very walls were alive, waiting for something. Something or someone to awaken them. Amelia could feel it in her bones, a pull, a magnetic force drawing her forward. For a moment, none of them moved. The silence was deafening. The creature's hum from above had disappeared entirely, replaced by a deeper, more resonant vibration coming from the chamber itself. Amelia's heart raced. They had crossed a threshold. There was no going back now. "What do we do?" Liam's voice was shaky, betraying the fear that had gripped him since the ground had first started shaking. Is this safe?" "I don't know," Amelia replied, her voice steady but her mind in turmoil. "But we have no choice. We have to go in." Sam nodded, though his face was a mask of uncertainty. He glanced at the rest of the crew, his fingers lightly touching the control panel as if testing for a response. The rover's systems were still operational, but something felt off, like the rover itself was wary of the chamber ahead. "We need to stay together," Amelia said firmly, eyes fixed on the dark, glowing mass inside the chamber. "Stay close, and be ready for anything." She didn't give them a chance to protest. The pull was too strong. She took the first step into the chamber, and the others followed, their footsteps echoing eerily in the vast, hollow space. As they entered, the door behind them began to close, slowly but purposefully, as if it were trapping them inside. The massive metallic door groaned, its final creak echoing through the cavern like a warning. The air inside the chamber was unlike anything they had experienced on Mars. It felt alive, thick with a strange energy that seemed to permeate their skin, settling deep into their bones. Each breath felt heavier, more loaded with meaning. They moved deeper into the chamber, the eerie light illuminating strange alien symbols carved into the walls, similar to the ones they had seen earlier. But these symbols were different. They were more intricate, more detailed, and they seemed to shift as they walked past them, like they were alive, responding to their presence. "Do you see this?" Liam said, his voice a mix of awe and dread as he pointed to a symbol that flickered before their eyes, moving like a liquid across the wall. It was as if the entire chamber was breathing with them. "Yeah, I see it," Sam said, his voice low, almost fearful. This is way beyond anything we've ever studied. I don't know what we're dealing with here." Amelia stopped, her gaze drawn to the center of the chamber. At the heart of it all stood a massive structure. It was both familiar and alien, an odd fusion of metal and stone, like something ancient yet beyond the grasp of human understanding. There were deep engravings carved into its surface, but they were different from the ones on the walls. These were more like conduits, veins that seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very structure was alive. "What is that?" Liam asked in awe. Is that the source of the power here?" Amelia nodded, her throat tight. "It looks like it." They slowly approached the central structure, the energy in the air increasing with every step. The walls around them shimmered, and the strange hum deepened, as though the structure itself was reacting to their presence. The closer they got, the more intense the pull became. It felt as though the chamber was alive, watching them, waiting. "Amelia," Sam's voice was hesitant. I don't think we should get any closer. This is beyond anything we were prepared for. I know, she replied softly, not looking back at him. But we're here now. We need to understand what this is. We can't just turn back. They reached the base of the structure, and Amelia instinctively reached out to touch it. The moment her hand made contact, the entire chamber seemed to respond. The energy in the air spiked, and the pulsing veins on the structure lit up, glowing with a brilliant, ethereal blue. The ground beneath them shuddered again, but this time, it wasn't from the creature. It was as if the structure itself had come alive. Amelia, get back! Liam shouted, panic evident in his voice. But it was too late. The moment her fingers touched the structure, a wave of light erupted from it, flooding the entire chamber. The crew staggered back, shielding their eyes from the blinding brilliance. The air felt charged, as if they were standing in the midst of an electrical storm. The energy around them was so thick, it was almost suffocating. And then, as quickly as it had come, the light dissipated, leaving the chamber bathed in an eerie, silent glow. What just happened? Sam whispered, his voice trembling. His eyes were wide with disbelief. Amelia's heart was pounding. She couldn't explain it, but she knew one thing. The structure had recognized them. It had reacted to them. Did we just activate it? Liam asked, fear creeping into his voice. Is it alive? Amelia took a step back, her mind spinning. She didn't have the answers, but she did know one thing. Whatever this was, it was not just technology. It was something far older, far more advanced, something that had been buried here for millennia, and it was connected to the creature above. They had awakened something that had been dormant for too long. Suddenly, the ground rumbled beneath their feet again. This time, the rumble wasn't just a tremor. It was a deep, resonant force, shaking the very foundation of the cavern. The walls around them seemed to ripple, as if the structure's energy was spilling out into the entire cavern. It's happening again, Amelia said, her voice tense. We need to get out of here now. But before they could turn to flee, a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber. No, it wasn't a voice. It was a vibration, a frequency that resonated directly within their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakable. It was calling to them. Amelia froze. She wasn't sure whether it was fear or curiosity that kept her rooted to the spot. But there was something in that voice, that frequency, that beckoned her forward. The creature, the structure, the chamber, they were all connected, and she realized with chilling clarity. They had just uncovered the beginning of something that could change everything. Let's move, she said, her voice firm as she turned toward the entrance. We're not leaving empty-handed. Not now. The crew followed her without hesitation. Whatever lay ahead, whatever they had just activated, they would face it together. There was no turning back. But as they hurried toward the exit, Amelia's mind raced with one question that she couldn't shake. What had they just unleashed? What do you think is happening inside the chamber? Is it a warning, a test, or something even more dangerous? What does the creature want from them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they rushed back toward the exit, but the intensity of the shaking was growing, spreading like a pulse through the very core of the chamber. The once eerie hum had escalated into a deep, resonant roar that seemed to shake the walls, the floors, and even their bones. Amelia's heart was pounding. Every instinct told her to run, but something held her in place, something beyond fear or rational thought. It was a compulsion, a whisper deep inside her mind, urging her to stay, to understand. Amelia, we need to move, Liam shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her back toward the door. But Amelia resisted. Her gaze was fixed on the glowing structure, which had now started to hum with even greater intensity. The veins of energy that had illuminated the walls were no longer just flashing. They were pulsing, rhythmically, like a heart beating in time with the tremors shaking the ground. She turned to Sam, her eyes wide with urgency. What's happening? Is this normal? Sam's face was pale, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. He tapped frantically on his tablet, but the interface was glitching, static filling the screen as if the very signals of their equipment were being disrupted by the energy around them. "I don't know," he said, his voice shaking, "but this is not normal. The energy here, it's off the charts. It's like the entire system is coming online. Whatever we've triggered, it's not something we can control." The rumbling intensified, and for a moment, it felt as if the entire chamber would collapse around them. Amelia stumbled back toward the others, but she couldn't take her eyes off the central structure. There was something about it, something deeply unsettling, but also undeniably fascinating. It was as if it were calling to her. "Let's go," Liam urged again, his voice tight with panic. But just as they turned toward the exit, the pulsing energy around them suddenly shifted. The walls of the chamber seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding as if the very air itself was alive. A deep, low voice reverberated through the chamber, a guttural sound, not like anything they had ever heard before. It was as though the structure itself was speaking. Amelia froze. The others stopped too, their eyes wide, uncertain of what was happening. The voice was not of the creature, they could tell that much. It was something far deeper, far older, something they had never encountered. It wasn't speaking in words. It was a frequency, a vibration that resonated directly within their minds, bypassing their senses entirely. But Amelia understood it. She felt it. The message was clear, despite the alien sound. "You have awoken me. Now, you must bear witness." The words echoed through her mind, and she felt them seep deep into her consciousness. It was as though the structure was alive, aware of them, aware of everything. It was ancient, older than humanity, older than Earth itself, and it was waiting. "What does that mean?" Sam asked, his voice barely a whisper. I think it means it wants us to stay," Amelia said, her voice trembling despite her attempts to remain calm. She took a step forward, drawn in by the powerful presence of the structure. "We have to see this through. Whatever this is, it's more important than we understand." Liam grabbed her by the arm. "No, Amelia. This is insane. It's dangerous. We don't know what we're dealing with here. We need to get out before it's too late." Amelia shook her head, but before she could respond, the ground trembled again, this time more violently. The walls around them rippled, warping in ways that defied logic. The light from the structure flared, blinding in its intensity, and the hum of the chamber reached a deafening pitch. The entire space felt alive, as if it were transforming. Then, the silence returned. But this time, it was different. A strange, pulsing light shot out from the central structure, illuminating the entire chamber with an intense, otherworldly glow. The walls shimmered and reshaped themselves, shifting as if the very space was reconfiguring, forming new shapes, new pathways, new symbols. Amelia gasped, her eyes wide with wonder and terror. The chamber was alive, alive in a way they couldn't explain. Liam backed away, his eyes wide with fear. "What is this? What's happening?" The voice spoke again, but this time, it wasn't just a vibration. It was a command, clear and urgent, and it was directed at them. "You have come too far to turn back. Witness. Understand." A sudden, powerful wind blew through the chamber, swirling around them with a force that knocked them to their knees. The ground trembled again, but this time, the tremors were different, more deliberate. The structure was awakening, and with it, something else, something ancient and powerful. And then, as if on cue, a series of holographic projections sprang to life in front of them, hovering in midair. They were images, visions, of what appeared to be the history of the alien race that had built this place. Strange, ghostly figures moved through the holograms, their forms shimmering like shadows, their faces unfamiliar but somehow human. The images flashed by quickly, faster than they could comprehend, but Amelia caught glimpses of worlds long since destroyed, of technology beyond anything they had ever imagined. She saw towering cities, their structures made of materials that defied physics. She saw war, violence on a scale that took her breath away. But she also saw something else. She saw the creature, the one they had encountered earlier. But this time, it wasn't an enemy. It was a guardian, a protector of sorts, linked to the very fabric of the structure itself. It had been waiting for someone to come and awaken it. The projections suddenly halted, and one final image appeared before them. It was a symbol, a circle, surrounded by intricate lines that converged into a single point in the center. The same symbol that had appeared in the chamber when they first arrived. But now, it was more than just a symbol. It was a key. The key, Sam whispered, his eyes wide. This is it. The key to understanding all of this. Before they could react, the ground trembled again, this time with an overwhelming force. The energy in the air became unbearable, crackling with raw power. The holographic projections disappeared, leaving only the symbol, hovering in the air in front of them, glowing with a soft, pulsating light. Amelia felt a pull, an irresistible force urging her toward it. It was as if the symbol were calling to her. "Amelia," Liam said, his voice tight with fear. "What are you doing? Don't touch it." But Amelia didn't hear him. She was already stepping forward, her hand reaching for the symbol. The moment her fingers brushed the air where it hovered, a burst of energy shot through her, sending a shockwave of light and sound that threw the entire crew to the ground. And as the light enveloped her, Amelia's mind was flooded with visions of the alien civilization, its rise, its fall, and the terrifying truth of what they had unearthed. They had awakened something much bigger than themselves. Amelia's body was frozen in place, her hand still extended toward the glowing symbol as the energy coursed through her. The world around her blurred into a storm of flashing lights, vibrant colors, and strange, fragmented images. Her mind was no longer her own. She was a passenger inside her own consciousness, pulled into a whirlwind of alien memories and emotions that she could neither understand nor control. For what felt like an eternity, she drifted in this cosmic sea, helpless. The sensation of being pulled into something vast, ancient, and overwhelmingly powerful surged through her. It was as though the very fabric of reality itself was stretching and distorting around her, bending to an alien will. She could feel the weight of countless ages pressing down on her, millennia of knowledge, of history, of pain. Then, suddenly, the storm of light and energy receded, leaving behind a strange, haunting silence. Amelia's surroundings had completely changed. The dark, mechanical chamber was gone. Instead, she stood in a vast, desolate landscape, an alien world that stretched out before her in endless, shifting dunes of dust. The sky above was an eerie shade of purple, swirling with clouds that shimmered like liquid metal. Her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the presence of something ancient, something watching her from the shadows. It was not hostile, but neither was it welcoming. This was not a place meant for human eyes. And then, she heard a voice. It was familiar and yet foreign, like a whisper that echoed deep within her mind. "You stand on the precipice of understanding, but the path forward is not one of redemption. It is one of reckoning." The words vibrated through her very being, their meaning sinking deep into her bones. This was not just a message. This was a test, a challenge. Before she could process this, the ground beneath her feet shifted. The sky darkened, and the air became thick with tension. Amelia felt a presence, a force, moving around her, observing her every breath. A figure emerged from the shifting dust ahead of her, tall, humanoid, yet impossibly alien. Its form was cloaked in shadow, with glowing patterns etched across its body, pulsing like the veins of the ancient structure they had uncovered. It was him, the guardian they had seen in the holographic projections. Amelia's heart raced, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Was this the same creature they had encountered back in the chamber? Was it angry? Had she unleashed something they couldn't control? The guardian's voice, calm and commanding, reached her ears. "You have come far, child of Earth. But the question remains, why? Why have you chosen to seek the truth?" Amelia swallowed hard. Her mind was racing, but her voice came out steady, as if it had been guided by the strange energy coursing through her. I didn't choose. It's just, something called to me. I needed to understand. What is all of this? What's the purpose of everything we've found? The Guardian's figure loomed before her, the glowing patterns on its body shifting in time with its words. The truth you seek is not one that can be easily understood. It is the culmination of countless lifetimes, the result of choices made long before your kind came into existence. Amelia's mind spun. But I don't understand. What are we supposed to do now? What do you want from us? The Guardian tilted its head slightly, as though considering her question. You seek knowledge, but knowledge comes with a cost. The path you have chosen leads to a greater understanding, but it will also lead to great suffering. To unlock the truth, you must be willing to sacrifice. Are you prepared for that? Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. Was it warning her, or was it testing her resolve? Liam's voice suddenly broke through her thoughts. Amelia, he called, his voice distant and frantic. Amelia, are you okay? The Guardian's head snapped toward the sound of Liam's voice, its glowing eyes narrowing. You are not alone in this journey, the Guardian said, its tone softening. The choices you make will affect them as well. Amelia glanced over her shoulder, seeing Liam, Sam, and the others standing behind her, their faces a mix of confusion, concern, and awe. They couldn't hear the voice of the Guardian, but they could sense the overwhelming presence that hung in the air. Amelia, what's happening? Sam asked, his voice shaking. What's going on? You're not making sense. Amelia opened her mouth to explain, but no words came out. Instead, she turned back to the Guardian. Why us? She asked quietly. Why are we the ones who are chosen for this? What do you want from us? The Guardian did not answer immediately. It seemed to consider her question, the soft glow of its patterns shifting as it thought. You are not chosen, child of Earth. You are simply the next to stand at the crossroads. The same crossroads that those before you stood at. The same crossroads that brought an end to our world. Amelia felt the weight of its words like a heavy stone sinking in her chest. She wasn't the first? This had happened before? Whose crossroads? Amelia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ours, the Guardian replied. The crossroads of the ancient ones, the architects of all that you see now. We once thrived in this galaxy, but our civilization fell. And you? You are here to discover whether your civilization will survive the same fate. The weight of the Guardian's words struck Amelia like a thunderclap. She felt a sense of dread creeping up her spine. They weren't just facing an alien species or technology. They were facing the fall of an entire civilization, and now, their actions would determine whether humanity would follow the same path. Sam's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Amelia, we need to leave. This isn't safe. None of this makes sense. His words were filled with panic, and she could hear him moving toward her. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter, and the atmosphere thickened with power. Its voice boomed across the landscape, a deep, resonant command. You cannot leave until you answer the question. Will you sacrifice to save your kind? Liam stepped forward, his eyes narrowed with a mixture of fear and resolve. Amelia, we need to get back. This place is too dangerous. Whatever this thing wants, we don't need to give it an answer. Amelia's mind was racing. The pressure of the moment was too much. The truth, the cost, the choice. It all seemed like too much to bear. But somewhere deep inside her, she knew. She knew that leaving wasn't an option. Not anymore. I don't know if we can survive it, Amelia said softly, her voice trembling. But I know we can't leave without knowing the truth. The Guardian's form shifted, its eyes locking with hers, and the ground beneath them began to pulse with energy again. Then you shall bear witness, and you shall choose. The world around them shifted, and Amelia felt herself being pulled forward once again, deeper into the mysteries of the alien civilization. And in that moment, she understood. This was not just a test of knowledge. It was a test of humanity itself. Amelia's heart raced as the ground beneath her seemed to tremble with a force that rattled her bones. The Guardian's final words echoed in her mind. Then you shall bear witness, and you shall choose. The air thickened with an otherworldly tension, and the very atmosphere seemed to hum with an unseen power. Amelia took a step back, her mind swirling in confusion and fear. She was no longer just a witness to something extraordinary. She was now a player in an ancient, cosmic game whose stakes were beyond her comprehension. Liam stepped closer, his hand lightly brushing her shoulder as if to ground her, as if to remind her that she was not alone in this. "Amelia," he said softly, his voice trembling. "What's happening? This isn't real, right? We're not actually on another planet, are we?" She could hear the panic creeping into Liam's voice, and for a moment, the reality of the situation hit her like a wave. The winds howled, and the strange, glowing dust that floated through the alien landscape seemed to pulse in sync with the beating of her own heart. "I don't know, Liam," Amelia replied, her voice distant. She felt so small in this alien world, a tiny spark in the face of an ancient force. "I don't know what's happening, but I think it's real." The Guardian stood motionless, its glowing patterns rippling with energy as though waiting for something, waiting for them to act. Amelia's gaze shifted from the figure to her team. Sam, still visibly shaken, stood a few paces behind her, his eyes wide and full of uncertainty. "We have to decide," Amelia whispered, the weight of the Guardian's words pressing on her. "Will you sacrifice to save your kind?" Sam's voice came out shaky, barely audible in the thick air. "Sacrifice? What does that mean? What are we supposed to sacrifice?" His eyes darted between Amelia and the Guardian, confusion and fear written all over his face. "I don't know," Amelia admitted, feeling the enormity of the decision hanging over her like a dark cloud. "But we have to figure it out fast. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone." Liam's hand tightened on her shoulder, his face a mixture of determination and disbelief. "We can't just stand here, Amelia. We need to find a way out, a way back to the ship, to safety. This is too dangerous." But Amelia didn't move. The question, the choice, it consumed her. There was a deep part of her that knew she couldn't just turn her back on the truth they'd uncovered. The Ancient Ones had failed in the face of their own choices. Could humanity avoid the same fate? Would they even have a chance if they didn't understand the past? The air crackled again with an eerie energy, and the Guardian's voice filled the silence, resonating deep within their minds. "The answer is not simple. The path you choose will determine the future of your world. To learn the truth, to understand your place in this cosmos, you must be willing to make a sacrifice. It is the only way." Amelia swallowed hard. Her mind raced through the countless possibilities, the weight of her decision pressing on her chest. She couldn't help but think of Earth, of her family, her friends, the world she had left behind. Was she really prepared to risk it all? Was she prepared to sacrifice herself? Or perhaps someone else? "Amelia," Sam's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "This is madness. What is this place? What are we supposed to do?" The Guardian stepped forward, its presence filling the air, and Amelia could feel the ground beneath her feet shift, responding to the power it wielded. "The decision is yours alone, child of Earth. Choose, and your future will unfold accordingly." It was a riddle, an enigma. Amelia felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss she couldn't fully comprehend. But there was no turning back. She knew that now. What will happen if we refuse?" Amelia asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The Guardian's response was chilling. "Refusal is not an option. The decision will be made for you, and the consequences will be irreversible." The ground beneath her feet trembled again, and suddenly, the atmosphere around them began to pulse with a rhythmic energy. It was as though the entire world, the entire alien planet, was alive and waiting for their decision. Liam turned to her, his face pleading. "Amelia, please. We need to leave. I don't know what this is, but it's not worth it. We have no idea what this sacrifice even means." Amelia could feel his desperation, his fear, and for a brief moment, she doubted herself. What if this was all a trap? What if they were playing into something far darker than they could ever imagine? Could they really trust the Guardian? Could they trust what it was asking of them? But then, in the stillness, Amelia heard a voice, soft, distant, yet unmistakably familiar. Her father's voice. "Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that define us. And when the world asks you to sacrifice, it's because it needs you to make a choice. Your choice." Her father's words echoed in her mind, a reminder of everything she had been taught, of the courage and resolve she'd inherited from him. Amelia turned to face the guardian. We'll make the choice, but we need to understand. We need to know what we're sacrificing. The guardian seemed to pause, and for a brief moment, Amelia thought it might not answer. But then, it spoke again, its voice resonating with an ancient power. The sacrifice is not physical, but of the spirit. You will give up something essential, something that will bind you to the past and release you from the future. It was cryptic, like a riddle wrapped in layers of meaning. The future, the past, the spirit. Amelia's mind reeled, trying to piece it all together. What could any of them, give up to change the course of human history? I don't understand, Amelia whispered, her voice breaking. What do we need to give up? The answer lies in your deepest desires, your greatest fear. Only by letting go can you move forward. Only by sacrificing will you find the truth. The weight of the words crushed down on her, and for a moment, she felt like she might collapse under it. It wasn't just about the mission. It wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about giving up something personal, something that would change everything. Liam stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward Amelia. Amelia, please. Let's go back. We can't do this. We don't have to make a sacrifice. We'll figure it out together. We always have. Amelia looked at him, her heart torn in two. But deep down, she knew that there was no turning back. Not anymore. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the guardian, her eyes locking with its glowing ones. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm. The guardian nodded slowly, its form shimmering in the strange purple light. Then the choice is made. In that moment, everything changed. The air around Amelia shifted, rippling like the surface of a pond disturbed by a single stone. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble with the weight of her decision. The moment she had feared, the moment of sacrifice, was upon her. She stood there, facing the guardian, her heart thundering in her chest, but her resolve hardening. The words it had spoken still echoed in her mind. Only by letting go can you move forward. Only by sacrificing will you find the truth. For a moment, she felt as though the universe itself was watching her, waiting for her to make the next move. She looked back at Liam, Sam, and the rest of her crew. Their faces were filled with fear and confusion. They didn't understand what was happening, but they trusted her. Liam's eyes locked onto hers, his expression full of uncertainty. Amelia, please. His voice trembled, and his hand instinctively reached out, but she shook her head. She couldn't look away from the guardian. There was no going back. I have to do this, Liam, she said softly. I have to make this sacrifice. It's the only way to understand what's at stake here. It's the only way we can stop whatever's coming. Liam's face softened, but there was no denying the sorrow in his eyes. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. Amelia didn't reply. Her heart ached, but she knew there was no other choice. They had come too far, uncovered too much. If she didn't make this sacrifice, they would never find the answers. The universe itself would remain a mystery, and humanity would be left in the dark. The cost was high, but the stakes were higher. The guardian's voice filled the air again, steady and calm. You have made your choice, Amelia. Now, prepare to face the cost. Amelia took a deep breath and stepped forward, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. What would she have to give up? What could she possibly sacrifice to unlock the truth? She wasn't sure, but the question didn't matter now. The time for hesitation had passed. The ground beneath her feet began to pulse with a rhythmic energy, and the sky above seemed to twist and shift. The guardian raised its arm, and in an instant, the air around Amelia crackled with power. She felt something cold, something ancient, reach deep into her chest, as if the universe itself was probing her very soul. It was as though her deepest fears and desires were being laid bare before the cosmos. She felt herself being pulled in multiple directions, each option more unbearable than the last. She could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on her. This was the sacrifice. And then, it became clear. Amelia's vision blurred, her thoughts spinning. She saw flashes of her life, her childhood, her family, her home on Earth. She saw the mission, the crew, the faces of her friends, Liam, Sam, and the rest. She felt the love she had for them, the loyalty, the connection. And yet, she also saw something else, something darker. Her father's face, strained and distant, flashed before her eyes. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that define us. The words she had heard earlier took on new meaning, and suddenly, Amelia realized what was being asked of her. It was not a physical sacrifice, as the Guardian had implied. No, it was something deeper, something far more personal. The Guardian's voice echoed again, almost as though it was reading her mind. You must let go of what anchors you to the past, Amelia. You must relinquish the ties that bind you to the life you knew. Only then will you have the clarity to see the truth. Amelia's heart pounded as her mind raced. She felt her body tremble, the weight of the decision pressing down on her like an unbearable burden. What would she have to give up? Her family? Her friends? Her humanity itself? The world around her seemed to shift, warping and twisting in ways she couldn't explain. For a brief moment, she was no longer standing in the alien landscape. She was back on Earth, standing in front of her father's gravestone. She could feel the cold wind on her face, the emptiness in her heart. She had spent years grieving the loss of her father, blaming herself for not being able to save him. His death had been the catalyst that set her on this path, this impossible journey into the unknown. She had never truly let go of that pain, that regret. It had been her anchor, keeping her tied to Earth, to her old life. Amelia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The pain, the guilt, they had to go. To move forward, she had to let go of the past. And then, with a strength she didn't know she had, Amelia made the choice. She released the weight of her father's death, the years of guilt, the anger that had followed her like a shadow. She let it all go. For the first time, she truly felt free. It wasn't easy, but she felt the bonds that had held her so tightly unraveling, dissolving into nothingness. When she opened her eyes again, the world around her was different. The alien landscape seemed less foreign now, as if something had shifted. Something inside her had shifted. The Guardian stood in front of her, its glowing form flickering, as if it was awaiting her reaction. The air was still, but there was a sense of resolution. Amelia had done it. She had sacrificed something essential, something integral to who she was. But in doing so, she had unlocked something far greater. The Guardian spoke again, its voice softer now, almost reverent. You have made your sacrifice, Amelia. The path forward is now clear. A brilliant light enveloped the entire landscape, and for a moment, Amelia felt as though she were floating in a sea of stars. She was no longer just the girl who had lost everything. She was something more. She was part of something ancient, something vast. But with that clarity came a deeper understanding of what lay ahead. The truth she had sought, the truth about humanity's place in the cosmos, was not just about survival. It was about understanding the delicate balance between sacrifice and knowledge, between the past and the future. Amelia looked at Liam, her heart full of a new sense of purpose. She had made the sacrifice, but there was still so much left to do. The future was no longer a mystery. It was a path that she was now ready to walk. But the journey was far from over. The brilliant light that enveloped Amelia began to fade, and as it did, she felt a strange calm settle over her, as though the chaos of the universe had finally quieted, leaving behind a profound clarity. The world around her, alien, bizarre, and vast, didn't seem as strange as it had moments ago. The sense of disconnection she had felt was replaced with a newfound understanding. She had made her sacrifice, and now, the path ahead was open to her. The Guardian stood in front of her, silent and still. Its glowing form seemed almost expectant, like a teacher waiting for a student to grasp the lesson. Amelia felt the weight of its ancient gaze, and in that moment, she realized that the power it held wasn't just in the knowledge it guarded. It was in the very act of choice, of free will. The universe, it seemed, didn't seek to control them. It only required them to make their decisions. But what did the future hold now? What had she unlocked with her sacrifice? Liam stepped closer to her, his eyes scanning her face as if looking for some sign, some trace of the person she had been. He reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. His touch was warm, grounding. "Amelia?" His voice trembled, and she could hear the concern in it. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, still processing the shift inside her. The weight she had carried for so long, the guilt, the uncertainty, was gone. What remained was a deep sense of purpose. She felt as though she had just woken up from a long, exhausting dream. The world around her seemed to breathe with life in a way it never had before. "I'm different," she whispered, her voice almost foreign to her own ears. Liam's brow furrowed, and he stepped back slightly, giving her space. "Different? In what way?" Amelia turned toward him, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, it was as though everything had slowed down, as though the entire universe was holding its breath. She felt more connected to him than she ever had before. Her heart raced, but it wasn't from fear. It was from something far deeper, a recognition of what they had been through together, of the bond they shared. But there was more to this journey, more to the truth they were only beginning to understand. She knew that now. "I've unlocked something," she said, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "But it's not just about us, or even this mission. It's about humanity, about all of us, and where we go from here." Liam's eyes softened. "I know, but what exactly did you unlock? What's next?" Amelia didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing with certainty. The truth. The real truth. The Guardian spoke of it, of humanity's place in the cosmos. "We've been looking at it all wrong. The past, the mistakes of the ancient civilizations, they were a warning. But there's hope too. There's a chance for us to break the cycle, to build something new." Liam was silent for a moment, taking in her words. He glanced around at the alien landscape, his expression thoughtful. "We've always believed that the universe is a vast, impersonal place," he said softly. "But now, after everything we've seen, everything we've experienced," he looked back at her, his voice full of awe. "Maybe the universe is personal. Maybe it's about choices, our choices." Amelia nodded, the connection between them deepening as the weight of their shared journey settled in. She could feel the truth resonating within her, and it was clear that their mission was far from over. "We still have a lot to learn," she said, taking a deep breath. "But we can't do it alone. We need to unite, to bring humanity together in a way we never have before. There's more to the universe than we've ever imagined." The Guardian, who had remained silent throughout their conversation, finally spoke, its voice now full of quiet reverence. "The path is now yours to walk. The knowledge you seek will come in time. But remember, the greatest challenge is not in what you learn, but in what you choose to do with it." Amelia turned to face the Guardian, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Guardian's glowing form flickered, and for a moment, Amelia saw something in its eyes. Something ancient, something sorrowful. "The knowledge you have unlocked comes with a responsibility. To see the truth is to be burdened by it. But it is not a burden you must carry alone. You must share it with your kind, with all who are ready to hear it. And in doing so, you will change the course of history forever." Amelia stood in stunned silence as the weight of those words settled over her. The responsibility was overwhelming. To know the truth of humanity's place in the cosmos, to see what others could not see. It was a gift, but also a curse. What would humanity do with this knowledge? Would they rise to the challenge, or would they repeat the mistakes of the past? Liam, sensing her internal struggle, reached for her hand, his touch steady and warm. "We'll face it together," he said softly, his voice full of conviction. "You don't have to carry this alone, Amelia. We all chose this journey. We all have a part to play." She squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with gratitude. Together, they would face whatever came next. The rest of the team had gathered around them, their faces filled with the same mix of uncertainty and determination. They, too, had witnessed the immense power of the Guardian and felt the shift in the very fabric of the universe. But they were ready. They were ready to face whatever truths lay ahead. Amelia took one last look at the Guardian, and then at her team, her heart filled with resolve. They had made it this far. They had unlocked the first pieces of the puzzle. Now, it was up to them to put the pieces together, to understand the true meaning of their mission. The journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The universe had revealed its secrets, but it would take more than knowledge to save it. It would take courage, unity, and above all, the will to make the hard choices. The path is yours, the Guardian said one final time. Walk it with wisdom. With those words, the Guardian vanished into the ether, leaving Amelia and her team standing on the precipice of the unknown, their future uncertain but full of infinite possibility. The journey home would not be easy, but they would face it together, ready to change the course of history, one choice at a time.